start the meeting. We have a long agenda tonight. Yeah. Call the meeting to order at 7:31. In attendance for the board, we have Janet, Alan, Chow, Ginny, Lynn, Dick, Milton, Andy. I have been informed that Nancy and Sherry will not be joining us tonight. And for staff, we have Susan and Sherry. Remind everyone of our civility principles. Speak kindly, don't speak ill. Accept and give constructive criticism. Apologize earnestly. Respect others' opinions. Respect other people's time. Yeah. We'll remind you that the meeting is being recorded and streamed. So you will be on television. Announcement of closed and special meetings. There was a closed meeting of the Board of Directors on December 14th, 2017. In attendance was Dick, Janet, Alan, Milton, Nancy, Greg, Andy, Ginny, and Sherry. The vote to close, which was actually done at the November 9th meeting, was 8-0-0. The meeting was closed under Section 3 and 4. 3 is consultation with legal staff on legal matters. And, 6, consultation of the terms and conditions of a business transaction in the negotiation stage if the disclosure could adversely affect the economic interests of the homeowners association. The meeting was closed at 9 o'clock and it was ended at 10:30. The purpose of the meeting was update on legal proceedings and discussion of a business transaction. There was a closed meeting of the Architectural Resource Committee held on Monday, January 8th, 2018. The ARC members present were Deb Bach, Eva Marie Lambright, Tom Mungo. The vote to close was 3-0-0. It was closed under Section 4, consultation with staff personnel, consultants, attorneys, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation. The meeting was closed at 1:01 p.m. and opened at 1:34 p.m. And the purpose was discussion of new and ongoing covenant cases. There was a closed meeting of the Board of Directors on January 11th, 2018. In attendance were Dick, Lynn, Janet, Alan, Milton, Nancy, Greg, Andy, Ginny, and Shari. The vote to close, which was taken at the November 9th meeting, was 8-0-0. It was closed under Section 6, consultation of the terms, consideration of the terms and conditions of a business transaction in the negotiation stage if the disclosure could adversely affect the economic interests of the homeowners association. The meeting was closed at 9:40 p.m. and opened at 10:40 p.m. And the purpose was a discussion of a potential transaction. That is all the closed meeting sheets I have. Move on to approval of the agenda. I would like to add under 8B, number 8, the calling of a closed meeting for the board for our after our February 8th work session. Any problem with that? No? No? All right, any other changes?
Oh, yeah, thanks.
If not, all those in favor of the, is there a motion to approve the amended agenda? Chow?
Yeah.
Second? Ginny? Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. No disclosures of conflicts of interest have been brought to my attention. To move on to resident speak out. Thank you, Val. First up, we have Linda Wengel. Welcome, Linda. If you could just sit at the table and speak into the mic.
I want to express my appreciation for this. Much better than standing for you. Very comfortable. Thank you very much for that. So the planning board hearing for the Lakefront is a week from tonight, and I see it is on your agenda to discuss tonight. So I want to reiterate and add to our previous testimony for you. So I'm Linda Wengel for the Town Center Village Board. My concern is that Howard Hughes has rewritten the neighborhood guidelines, and I think they've significantly altered the vision for the lakefront as set forth in the 2010 Downtown Design Guidelines, which were to serve as a measure for writing the neighborhood guidelines. So I'm going to read the differences between the two briefly. The 2010 guidelines, as it expresses the vision for the lakefront. I'm going to start with the lakefront is a lively, walkable neighborhood connected and oriented to Lake Kittamakundi. At the north end of this waterfront neighborhood, there will be a modestly scaled waterfront neighborhood. Modestly, I emphasize. Primarily residential and hotel community along a redesigned Wincopin Street, lined with trees and fronted with mid-rise residential and some office buildings. So we know now that the mid-rise meant the 9-story limit. The request for 16 story is a radical change. It's 67% higher than 9 stories. So that is a major change, and the other buildings in the area will all be over 9 stories except for the direct lakefront, which stay at 4. Okay, the second has to do with the Hug Park area. The central lakefront, reading for 2010, the central lakefront area of the existing fountain is an important symbolic gathering space in Columbia. Iconic sculptures such as the People Tree and the Hug are landmarks in the community. This area has been the setting for community gatherings since the founding of Columbia. This culturally significant landscape should retain its purpose as a central gathering place and amenities area, but also be revitalized. I'm emphasizing there it should retain its purpose. The landscape should retain its purpose. And if we remember, there was no provision. In fact, they declined to put in the requested street in 2010. The neighborhood guidelines recently written by Howard Hughes has added a significant change with the stroke of a pen. The existing art sculptures located within the FTP area will be preserved and relocated within the lakefront core neighborhood. And there was no mention of relocating the hub. And that was deliberate because there was a lot of community opposition to putting in a street which necessitated not only relocating the hub, but also the surrounding trees. So basically, those are my concerns, that these are two changes that are significant to the community. So our opposition next week will be about these changes, which we think changes the whole atmosphere of the lakefront.
Thank you, Linda. Any questions? Alan?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is just actually a small comment. If it was 9 stories and now 16 stories, that's actually 78%.
78%?
More.
Gee,
15.
my grandson
15 is
made a
even.
mistake.
Okay.
And by the way, there are,
Okay.
on either side of this lakefront, they are allowed to have 20-story buildings in the, building height plan. This was a separated, deliberately separated, this special use.
So my question to you is what, and I may be wrong about the 78. If it's 15 stories now, then I may be wrong about that. That'd be 67%. You were right.
Oh,
Um,
that's my grandson.
He did well. Given that we don't have a vote on these guidelines, what is it you would like from this? What would the town center board like from the
Well,
CA board?
I do believe that since this is Columbia Association's gem, I would say, the gem of Columbia, Lakefront, that your voice in opposition, if you do vote that way, would be significant.
Any other questions for Linda? Thank you, Linda. Next up, we have Marcy White. Welcome, Marcy.
Good evening. My name is Marcia White. I've lived in Columbia for 21 years and in Oakland Mills for that entire time. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend your budget meeting last week, but I'm here tonight to ask that you fund the proposed pathway construction and associated improvements outlined in the Inner Arbor Trust grant request to CA in the amount of $500,000 over 2 years. I fully support the Inner Arbor plan, and I was pleased to be at your meeting in 2013 when CA approved the plan to transform Symphony Woods into the cultural park envisioned in the downtown plan. With the Chrysalis, we are off to a great start. I am thrilled with this venue, and my husband and I have attended several wonderful events there since it opened last year. There's a lot of very positive buzz about the Chrysalis. Google it. People are referring to it as urban sculpture, which is exactly what you want to hear when building an arts park. People with an interest in the arts and architecture are traveling from all over the metro area to see it and to be a part of it. My engineer husband still marvels at its comprehensive design. And if you haven't heard what the sound is like inside the Chrysalis, I urge you to attend a concert there. And I am also thrilled with the completed pathway construction and improvements CA has made to the path around Lake Kittamakundi. I use the path to get in a couple miles of exercise whenever I can, usually stopping at the Whole Foods for breakfast or lunch afterward. And downtown is shaping up to be a destination for leisure activities besides shopping, and I am really happy about that. But the main reason I would like to see the Inner Arbor plan come to fruition, full fruition, is somewhat selfish. I am particularly interested in the benefits the park will have for my village of Oakland Mills. Our motto in Oakland Mills is, "We value connections." And the proposed pathways in and around the park, along the enhanced existing pathways at Lake Kittamakundi, and the improved pedestrian bridge over Route 29 connecting Town Center to Oakland Mills, will make the walk from our village to Merriweather Park shorter and easier for citizens east of Route 29. This connection will make our village more attractive to young families who want to be able to walk or bike to an exciting destination like downtown Columbia and its world-class arts park and music venue. We have been working steadily on revitalization plan for Oakland Mills, and this improved connection to downtown offers an exciting 21st century amenity that would absolutely benefit Oakland Mills, and whatever benefits Oakland Mills Village benefits all of Columbia. There is much yet to be done in Merriweather Park to transform it into the world-class arts park that the Inner Arbor Plan envisions, and continued funding from stakeholders like the Columbia Association is essential for that to happen. I see this park as a capital investment in the future of our community. It has already proven itself a destination in the Baltimore-Washington corridor, and further improvements planned by the Inner Arbor Trust, including the pathways for which funding is sought now, will elevate Columbia to a greater regional and national, and give it the national attention as a great place to live. I ask you to please support the funding for the pathways as requested by the Inner Arbor Trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Any questions? Thank you. Next up, we have Tim Lavin. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. It's good to see you again. Thanks for allowing this opportunity to address the board. And I'm going to speak to agenda item 8B7 on efforts to monitor community activities related to climate. But first, I wanted to thank the board for your unanimous vote last October to endorse the We Are Still In declaration. And just to report on a couple of things that have happened since that time. In November, the world gathered in Bonn for the UN climate negotiations, and Maryland was well represented there by Maryland's Secretary of Environment, Ben Grumbles. And I thought it was significant that there was also a very strong presence of the We Are Still In gathering of entities, cities, states, private companies, etc., from around the United States. In fact, since the time Colombia agreed to join it, it's grown by another 300 entities. So now there are more than 2,500 around the country that have endorsed the We Are Still In declaration. Also, in November, the Trump administration issued a report that was prepared by the National Climate Assessment. This is a collection of 13 federal agencies. It was called the Climate Science Special Report, and it basically concluded that humans are the dominant force driving climate change and that we are now living in the warmest period in the history of human civilization. And that was the considered judgment of the 13 federal agencies, and this was a report issued by the current administration. Just about a week ago, the World Economic Forum, which organizes the World Conference that's happening right now in Davos, where the president and about half of the government now are attending, they issued the Global Risks Report, which is basically based on analysis from a variety of experts, over 1,000 business executives around the world, looking at what are the primary risks facing the business community going forward. And I just wanted to cite that of the 5 risks that are most likely to happen in the next 10 years, 3 of the 5 are climate-related: extreme weather events, natural disasters, and failure of climate change mitigation and adaptation. 3 of the top 5 risks that these business executives see as the top risks for the business community in the next 10 years. And then finally, on January the 10th, Governor Hogan enlisted Maryland as a member of the U.S. Climate Alliance, which is a constellation of states that have agreed to collaborate and engage more effectively on climate. And I think it reflects that there is bipartisan support for this around the country, because a number of states now, including Maryland, that have Republican governors are members of this alliance. And I saw Secretary Grumbles just yesterday in Annapolis, and I think they're quite enthused about that. So really gratified that the board is considering forming a committee to look at climate issues, and I think it's important to keep that focus on climate. I know there's some thinking about maybe calling it a sustainability committee, an environment committee. I leave it to the board's judgment as to what's best. We just hope that the focus is kept on climate issues, because I think it can help in strengthening the impact that you have in being able to deal with those issues, as well as the impact it has in the broader community in terms of the signal that it sends to the community about the focus of the Columbia Association on this issue. And it could serve a twofold purpose. One, to provide advice to the board, but also to help amplify what it is that Columbia is already doing, because we know it's doing such great work. We've had the briefings. We know what great work has been done over the last 5 years to reduce emissions by CA, and that's terrific. And such a board could really be a force multiplier to help enlist more community participation. So anyway, just wanted to wrap it up and say thank you very much for your consideration, and really look forward to hearing your deliberations tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Any questions? Alan and Janet?
Let
Alan?
Janet go first.
Okay, Janet?
So Tim Titus, who's the Long Reach representative for the Watershed Committee, had proposed to me considering a local and a global perspective. So taking the existing watershed and potentially expanding that to local sustainability, and then taking advantage of the expertise in the community for a global climate advisory committee that could work in conjunction with each other, but one would have a global and one would have a local. How do you feel about that idea?
Well, I mean, I do think there is value to bringing in a global perspective. I just think, again, it would ultimately depend on how you, the board, really decide what you want and what you feel you need in terms of any kind of advice coming in. Because clearly, if it's an advisory board, that's all it is anyway. It's advice, so basically it's free advice, right? But I also do think there might be value to having a board that can provide a function to not only help with sort of the inward-looking aspects of what it is that the Columbia Association is doing, but maybe also more outwardly looking to help leverage what it is that CA is doing and to help elevate the profile and the leadership that CA is already showing, and to help make it more visible, and to help encourage others in the community to engage more, so that as there are efforts to go out to the villages to get more folks to put in clean energy or energy efficiency and whatnot, that kind of a committee could help in leveraging those kinds of efforts, I think, and building greater participation.
Alan? That was my question.
Okay. Any other questions for Tim? Thank you, Tim.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Joel Horwitz. Welcome, Joel.
Joel Hurwitz, 5681 Upper's Farm, Upper's Choice. Continuing where Tim left off, wearing my Indivisible shirt because he's the head of the Indivisible Environmental Action Group. If you heard the Doomsday Clock people today reading over their report, one of the positive things they mentioned was all the entities, businesses, and cities that had joined that we are still in. So pat yourself on the back for that. Thank you. I guess with Janet's question, I don't understand exactly what you're envisioning with broadening the scope of the body. It seems that rather than just dealing with water and pesticides, if it became a sustainability board, you'd end up people want to deal with the deer management issues and bats, which we had a discussion in my condo about, encourage getting rid of insects, recycling, styrofoam bans. It seems that if you're trying to go with the scope of the county sustainability board, which is generally all over the place, they generally deal with everything and sometimes, I guess, not deal with anything. They were given the responsibility a few years ago by the, I guess, executive of the council to study the mold problem in the schools, and I was at one of their meetings at the time. I didn't want that job because they didn't know anything about mold. That was not any of their expertise, and they really didn't know how they were going to deal with that. So because you don't have an active enough water group, you're going to make it bigger and then have more responsibilities, and I'm not sure if that solves the problem. Regarding the downtown, I find the plan particularly disingenuous on Howard Hughes's part, that they originally wanted to tear down the teachers' building and keep the American City building, but now they swapped them and then want to do the same plan. And the access lines and the sight lines don't make any sense when the teachers' building is still there. And they want to put the amenity space where it would make sense if the teachers' building wasn't there, but it makes no sense to me because you've closed off basically all access to the lake. You can't see it. You're going to have this view between Whole Foods and the building in the parking lot that you have to go basically in that little corner to see the lake and the fountain and the Veterans Monument. They seem unwilling to move the library from the Crescent there, which if they did would give a community, a civic organization down there. It would give bathrooms for lakefront events. It would allow the library to participate in lakefront events. And it would solve some of the parking issues that have been raised, that there's no general community parking available, which there would be, especially in the evenings when the library is closed, if there was a library there. I think the road could be located to go around the hug and save most, if not all, of the trees there, because if the American City's building's not there, there is no reason why they need to put the road there, because they could put it on where the patio of the American City building is and shift the road over, and they should be encouraged to do that, save the hug and the amenity space over there. I'd come up with a different plan, because they also don't seem to have any coherent plan, talking to Greg Fitchett, how to get up the hill at the mall, an ADA. So I came up with it needs a bridge, and I thought that makes much more sense than trying to get up that hill there, which they have no plan for at the current time. Thanks.
Thank you, Joel. Any questions for Joel? Thanks, Joel. That's all I had on the sign-up sheet. Anyone else in the audience? If not, thank you very much. We'll move on to chairman's remarks. Ooh, you just pass it. You have my written remarks. The one thing I did want to tell you that I actually attended the meeting of the BWI Metroplex Noise Committee. I call it the Noise Committee. Easier.
People understand it better than.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very interesting. Paul could not go, so I sat in for Paul. There is a lot of information that's going to be put out on the website, and there is a plan to come out sometime in February, March that's talking about things. But they're going ahead with the governor and the Attorney General are moving ahead with potential lawsuit. So, any questions? All right, move on to Milton's report. Milton gave us a written report. Milton, anything you want to?
Just any questions? I know that everyone read it. So you have any questions?
Alan?
Yeah, I have a couple. Over the holidays, I went to several events, neighborhood events and that sort of thing, parties, and heard an earful about people from the Hobbits Glen who work at Hobbits Glen who are being told they can't wear Hobbits Glen shirts anymore but must wear Columbia Association shirts. Their feeling is that it destroys some of the image, the camaraderie, the specialness. I wonder if you could, was that accurate on their part, or is this?
This is the first time I've heard anything about that. I guess I will.
Okay. Second thing I heard about is, and I want to make sure that the resident who mentioned this to me was very, very positive about the voice-to-voice communications he had with a couple of different CA staff. So that was
That's
positive.
good to hear.
That was very good to hear. He was not pleased with the letter he got, and it had to do with an adverse possession, or our feeling that his wall was on our property. Anyway, so I don't want to get into that. That's not getting into specifics of that. What he said was that he was told that we were taking that he was told by us that we were taking a more aggressive stand on adverse possession type thing. I just wanted to verify that with you.
I'm not going to say we're taking a more aggressive stand. I think we're being more prudent, and we're looking at our land where private residents have intruded upon CA property. We've had a couple, and I think we've brought at least one or two since I've been here to the board. So that's what we're doing. We have we're finding out more and more as we look into this. There's more and more of those situations.
So just know that wasn't the message he got. Have we done what we need to do to officially be signed up to the We Are Still In? I went to their website. Would I see our name?
I still have the documentation that I signed up back in October, and plus Jeremy said he went on and I guess re-signed us up again. But yes, when the board took the action back in October, I went online and I copied what I did.
For the official thing. Okay. Finally, and the more important thing, we got a message that you're well aware of about ADA access to our pathways, and I would like to hear from you where we are on that. What's I don't need a full and complete report, but is there money in the budget for doing the pathway cuts, curb cuts, and whatever that we need to do?
But before we get into the money in the budget, Sherry, help me with this.
Actually, Susan can probably answer this better than I can, but
What's the question?
pardon me?
What's the question?
The question is whether there's money in the budget to address ADA concerns, and the answer fairly simply is yes.
On our path, specifically on the pathways, curb cuts and things.
All of them that are
No.
legally responsible?
But ones that are ADA, that we have determined the pathways themselves are ADA compatible.
I should point out, I
Wait,
should
let
point
me-
out,
Right,
Before Susan get the budget, Sherry, I want you to address what we're responsible for
we,
doing.
at the moment, we in the county have had conversations and will be continuing to have conversations about the issue of curb cuts and where we should or should not have them, and then who would be responsible for paying for which curb cuts. So right now, it's an ongoing conversation. There are other things that factor into where curb cuts should be located besides whether a path is ADA accessible or not. So there may be circumstances where it looks like there should be a curb cut because the path is ADA accessible, but there are other reasons why a curb cut in that location is not appropriate. And that's something we have to work with the county on. So that's why this is kind of a work in progress.
And Alan, the email that you sent, I think it was you sent an email out this afternoon.
We all received an email,
Okay,
and I responded to
I
it.
forwarded it to Sherry, and we will follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
I think
And Ginny, do you have
Yeah,
a mention?
I just assumed all curb cuts were the responsibility of the county, not CA at all. That's not our land, it's not our responsibility, so I'm a little unclear. Okay, I'll wait and hear what you find out.
Okay.
I have this thing, since I've been on the CA board, about not paying for things that are really the county's responsibility. It's been going on in some cases for too long, so, it would be, that's where I'm coming from.
I think Sherry answered quite nicely when she said it's an ongoing
I
discussion.
think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's...
Chow.
I have two questions, Milton. For the Howard County Council, so like Howard County Chamber, they testified in front of County Council about APFO, Adequate Public Facility Ordinance.
Yes.
So did you attend the meeting? And because I heard from a lot of parents, they actually are not satisfied how the Howard County Chamber, they're against the CB1 and CB2.
Yes.
Even they passed last year, but by mistake, there's some mistake, and they invalidated the CP1 and CP2. But when the county council reintroduced that, and now they come out really against that very strongly.
Yes, the Howard County Chamber is opposed to the current version of the Adequate Public Facility Ordinance, yes.
So what's your thought on that?
What's my source?
Yeah, I think you are on that board,
Yes,
right?
that's what I'm saying. They are opposed to it.
Okay. So that's okay. So the other issue is, I think, and the last time I saw that when our staff attended community meetings or design advisor panel meeting or some other
Yes.
develop meeting, they will send us an update and a summary on these kind of meetings, right? I see.
It's in the report on the planning and the community affairs. There's notations of what we attended those and what was some of the nature of those meetings. Yes.
Because there are two developments are related to River Hill. One is Erickson Living Development, the senior living. The other is Clarksville Square.
Yes.
And are we able to get some feedback from our staff how that will impact Columbia Association of
Well, we
Columbia?
have on the work session in February, I think.
We're going to discuss Erickson.
We're going to discuss
hoping
Erickson.
to discuss Erickson.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dick, any? Sorry, yeah.
Well, you mentioned that the chamber, which you're on the board of, is opposed to FO. As our representative on that board, do you have a position regarding FO?
No, it was a chamber decision, and the chamber board is a body of 40. Well, actually 30, 36, 37, and it was a board position because the chamber is a business-oriented entity to take opposition to that, because basically from whether it's stated in fact or it's just de facto, there's a perception that the AFO will create a moratorium when it comes to any new construction in Howard County.
CA has not taken a position.
CA has not taken a position on it.
And can we ask how you voted on this?
No, you cannot. When I sit on the chamber board,
He's
I'm
on the
representing the chamber. I'm on the chamber board.
Okay, all right. Well,
Any other questions? Thank you, Milton. Report from Inner Harbor reps. So we have the report in writing. Any questions? Dick?
Lynn, looking over the Sherry's report on what we're going to be lobbying against or in favor of, I noticed a couple of bills relating to alcohol and that we're supporting on behalf of.
That's not in the report, and that is not anything that the trust, has come to any.
Let me rephrase that. I should have gone that direction. I was wondering, are we planning to turn the Butterfly into a food court? Is that what the plan is?
The Butterfly is a multi-service, multi-purpose building. We're considering many different proposals for it. One of them would be sort of like a festival marketplace, rather than just a,
As opposed
standalone
to
restaurant.
a stand-up restaurant. Okay.
Excuse me, Dick, before you go on point of information, I don't see a report from the Inner Harbor reps in the packet.
Yes, there's one in.
It goes right from Milton's
Not the one that's
report
online.
to the Jane's update on the proposed development of the Lakefront Corridor.
I got it.
I thought
Yeah.
probably
In the packet.
Well, okay, we'll check to see what might have happened. But
It's
thanks
only,
for bringing
it's,
that
it's
up.
only a single page. Yeah, a couple of other things. Do we, Nina at our last, at our budget meeting said that she would give us a copy of the pathway plan that showed exactly what it is Inner Harbor is planning to do pathway-wise. I never got that. Is that being distributed to us?
We have it. It's certainly, and I know it's been distributed in the
Well,
past.
the only thing I saw was.
Glad to redistribute it.
Okay, I'd like to see it. Yes. The only thing I remember seeing was when this request came in for the funding. There were a couple of bad Xeroxes of. It's kind of sketchy. It wasn't really clear what.
This,
I did not see that. I would like to.
that's what came in with the request.
It doesn't look familiar.
This is what was included with the operating budget proposal.
Okay, I'd like to get a copy of that if I can. Okay, I had a couple other questions, but they're not that important.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll move on to the update on the lakefront design guidelines, and as I noticed here, I said the board may want to discuss it. Milton, anything you want to say, or just
We're going to start with Jane.
Jane? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good evening. So last we were together on this subject was in September twice, if you recall. Once you met and I briefed you and you had some questions, and I think the very next meeting I came back and talked some more. At that time, that was when the applicant had made public presentations and gone to the DAP, the Design Advisory Panel, and their preliminary application was being reviewed by the county. And we were talked to both the county and the applicant, meaning the CA staff, on concerns that I brought to your attention at that time, things that we thought the guidelines were unclear, and those having to do with height and massing, the connector road, the appropriate wrapping of garages so that they wouldn't be seen from our amenity space like the lakefront, the path for the ultimate pathway, which is along Little Patuxent Parkway. It's in the bike and master plan and the downtown plan to make sure that that would also be brought forward. So at that time, we got assurances that these things would be changed, and we saw them in the DPZ response to the applicant's preliminary application. So, and then the applicant updated its plans, and then the county did their job, which is to reevaluate. And the county just made the, staff made the recommendation to have it approved by the planning board with some comments from staff. Many of the things that I thought that we had discussed last time have been addressed, but not all, from what I understand about concerns of the board. So the next step is that they will be at the planning board February 1. This is a decision-making authority for the planning board, which is important. Sometimes they provide guidance to another body. At this stage, they are making the recommendation to approve or to approve with conditions or to disapprove. The next step then for the applicant is to go to the site plan level. So many questions that many of you have about the exact design of the buildings or about the stormwater plans, all of that is at the next stages of development. So we'd love to see some of those details, but they're not appropriate. What is appropriate at FDP level is particularly the height, the block, and road plan. So it is appropriate to be talking about the new connector road at this time. The design is to be done, actually how it will look is at the SDP stage, but if it's on the FDP, it's approved. It just the details have to be worked out. And I think that's just, I wanted to bring that to your attention. So the things that I had in my memo of last week, I think that the guidelines have been improved substantially related to the height. So they have requested 15 stories on the 2 sites, within 2 sites of building sites. In the downtown plan, those are shown as 9. But we've been, if you read the plan carefully and the zoning ordinance carefully, although those are plan guidance, the actual limit is 20 stories downtown. So that is that's a surprise to many people who read the plan as thou shall, but it's not. It's guidance. However, they have asked for 15 stories, but we thought that the massing could be overwhelming, so that it would be one big box, right, which you don't want. And so they have refined their guidelines to say that they will only have those 2 sites that will only be 50% of the floor plate would be at that height, which is 15 stories rather than 9. The difference between 9 and 15, just so you know, as far as percentages goes, it's the difference between 120 feet and 170 feet. So they do specify stories, but the guidance also, the plan also has the maximum height of those. Yes?
Could you help me understand that? Because it sounds like 5 stories are 10 feet each, but 9 stories, whatever
Yeah,
it is 120 divided by 9, that
it is a
doesn't
little
make sense.
peculiar. Architects have brought that to my attention, that the actual, if you go to 20 stories, it's 250. Those floors are much larger. There's some, I can't tell you at the time when those were approved by council why that those were approved, but they're not equivalent. So you have some jumps. So the average of that difference between 9 stories and 15 stories is something like 8 or 9 feet a story, where the difference between 15 and 20 is something like 16 average foot stories. Now, commercial stories are taller than residential stories. We know that. And what these guidelines and the heights generally allow for is at least 1 floor on the main floor, which is much higher, a lobby, retail. Sometimes it can be 2 floors of that. And then some kind of flooring, whether it's the 9 or 10 feet for residential or 13 feet, whatever it is for commercial.
When you say the county approved this, was this in the downtown plan of 2010 or?
Yeah. So
I don't recall
those heights.
those kinds of numbers being in that plan. But
Yeah,
I'll take a look.
actually I brought it with me tonight, so I can tell you what page. Okay, so the height has been, through the guidelines, has been that they will step the height down, and they show some diagrams. But the 50% I think is really important. So it's not going to be a block, a solid block, and I think we were concerned about that. And the higher areas surround the new amenity space, right? So they kind of give the view shed down to our lake, predominantly. And then there's another part of the building, it's shown in the guidelines, to be also tall, which is adjacent to the Whole Foods parking lot. So I do think that that is an improvement over what was in the guidelines before, in response to the planning department as well as the DAP that had concerns about that.
So I think when we discussed this before, we had talked about a light study. Has anything?
Oh yeah, they did. It's funny. It wasn't referenced in the. It is not referenced in the staff report that but they did do it, and I have seen it, and I do feel confident that that's not an issue, right? It has, when there's an afternoon, there's a little shade, but it's not in shade like the whole day or the whole night, whatever extraordinarily. So I felt that they did do that, and it was submitted to the county, so I felt that was a good result. Thank you for asking that. I was going to go on, and then I'll offer the floor back to you, but please, you can interrupt me for questions. The big issue I've heard from some of you and out in the community, the parking issue. And I think this is a difficult one for us to get our heads around. Parking at the lakefront, except for the few spaces on the street in Copeland Circle, near our old headquarters building, near the Sheraton, there's no publicly owned parking. Only that within the right-of-way. All the rest is privately owned parking that the public uses. So it's called publicly accessible, publicly available. The same thing is mostly downtown. That's true with maybe one exception. So today we park there without paying and also without being a customer. We're a customer of CA's, right? We go for a walk. We take families out to celebrate at the lakefront. But that land is not owned by us, and it's not owned by the county. So the applicant is under no requirement to provide a lot to the county, you understand, to designate it. And we brought this up before, and essentially the county is, they have no authority to do that. However, the applicant is building substantial new development. They're tearing a building down, but they're building new office and new retail and restaurant, which require lots of parking. So I think the applicant has said, look, there'll be a lot of parking. I can't tell you how much, and I could do the calculations based on the calculus, but I don't know the ultimate program of the Howard Hughes Corporation. If it's more restaurants, if it's more, less office, I just don't know. But there'll be substantially available parking. All the office parking will be empty except during office hours. Retail obviously fluctuates some more. The residential parking, I'm assuming, would be segregated for the residents and their guests with a key card or something. But the difference is it will be in a deck rather than being surface. So we have to learn how to, like when we used to park at Copeland's deck when we were into board meetings or something at our old offices. So I think it's a different way. And also there'll be less surface parking there and other places. So we might park once, but we might be parking at the mall, or we might be parking somewhere else and walking around to our destination. But I have no hesitation in saying that there will be publicly available parking there. The same developer has it everywhere else except for the Whole Foods lot, which was a requirement of that retailer because you can't sell groceries and not have a lot. But all the other lots downtown, you park in them, I'm sure, when you're doing business and you're parking in a lot or going to a meeting, you're parking in those lots. So I know it is a concern, and there is really nothing the CA can do or the government can do to require them to give a parcel for publicly available, and they're not going to sign it. But it does say, it may say public, but it's publicly available, just like under the Metropolitan. You know the P sign there, so you can park in there. Not too many people know, but it's not full, and so you can park in there for the part that's open to the public. So the actual tally of parking spaces will be done at the SDP stage. Today, there are hundreds of parking spaces in the building lot for the American Cities building, the Copeland deck, and then a few, around Winkoven. I don't know exactly. They have been parking studies. I've read them, but I've seen some conflicts, so I don't want to say how many there are today. There's somewhere probably between 500 and 700, and I know for sure that there'll be at least that many new parking spaces in the new development. Again, we don't know the calculation, but just doing the back of the envelope. So I know it is a concern, but it's a conceptual concern, change in our mindset about our downtown and that it will be more deck parking and more shared parking.
Joe, did you?
Jean, I have a question about the parking lot. So right now, they have like 500, right? Even
We
after
don't, I know, I can't tell
maybe
you
right,
exactly
and even after they are building a lot of tall high building, they still think 500 will be still good enough?
I don't know their program specifically, nor what the county will require. Sometimes they allow joint parking, right? But still, I think there'll be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of parking spaces that will be built and mostly sit vacant because they're office spaces. So during the day, they'll be full, but just like the parking that we see in most, developments that have office. So they're building net new 100 and some odd square feet of office and 50 some square feet of retail and restaurant. Plus there's existing office and retail that's staying, and they'll have to make sure that those are accommodated too in the new parking. They don't just get a free ride. So I just don't, I think there will be parking. I won't be able to change those people's minds who have parked for generations on somebody else's property, and we value that, right? We've had an agreement. It's not written anywhere, but there is not much that we can do about it. And I do think we'll have to get used to parking in structured parking decks, and eventually parking once and walking to several destinations from there.
So following up on that around parking, I have no problem with decks, but they're planning on building a building in the parking lot we use for Haven.
Yes, they have said that they would come. We have a lease agreement with them, so they have to provide the parking. So it's the same as Whole Foods. If they would ever build on the Whole Foods, they'd have to
Right.
have
But
a
if
deck.
Whole Foods is
They have the upper
if Whole Foods has that parking,
right, and we have the
then
lower.
Haven parking is going to be what, across at the mall, or?
No, it's a good question. So the bottom of the building that they are proposing for the Haven
I'm
parking
talking
lot.
while they're building the building.
Oh, I'm sure that they'll make accommodation for that, and I don't know how that will happen, but that's done in construction all the time, and we would have to negotiate. That's a business, that's a lease to a lessee. They have to accommodate us, and that's way down the road. But during construction, you have to have an alternative plan, same like as a traffic plan.
Actually, Jane, that is an important point. I'm not sure if the board caught it, but although they're submitting all these plans, they divided their FDP request into two parts. They call it what? And the part B is to be done later.
Well, that
Lot B.
is the part that's not, one of the parts that's not, is the parking lot of
Right.
Whole Foods is not
Yeah.
included. As far as the applicant has said, that they're thinking perhaps to do the new amenity park and the two residential/office towers first. The building down below is probably later on. They can't commit to that now, but that's that has some more regulatory hurdles. So I think that would be their first, what they do first. So on that parking, I know it is a community concern, but I do think that we have for a very long time parked. Now, when we have an event at Lakefront, we must get a license agreement from them to use the parking lot. So in the day, as a customer of the Lakefront, as a user, you just park there. But when we have events, or anybody has events, Howard Hughes has to sign off that it's appropriate currently. And it's the same as when people use our Lakefront, they got to get an agreement with us. So it's not free for our events or county events either. Everyone has to get, just like CA gets people to sign off on the licensing or use agreement. I think the other main issue has been the Wynkoven connector. And so for those in the community who've been here a while, during the 20-aughts, however you say that, 2006, 7, 8, 9, when the plan was being developed for downtown, there was a version of the plan that showed a bunch of roads in the lakefront area, as I recall, and there was dissatisfaction, strong dissatisfaction with that, and it didn't make it into the downtown plan, right, this connector. But I think that the applicant has found that I think it's a good idea, and DAP and the planning staff have also found, from an urban planning perspective, this small-scaled private road that kind of would have no curve and be more a material that's, different paving and so forth, mostly pedestrianized, but for local cars, would be good for movement in that area. So it has been enhanced and to have special paving now they're required. There will be parking on the building side, but it mostly be, it would be private, so it would be closed for events, and it wouldn't be built like a normal street. So I know that that is concerning. The other concern is how wide it is and how close to our land it might be and what the impacts of that. The actual design is at the STP stage. So I do hear that from an urban planning perspective. I do find this road to be a positive in the sense that you don't want people who've driven around from the Sheraton to drive around on Little Patuxent Parkway just to get a cup of coffee at Whole Foods, If they want to drive or if they want to bring groceries back to the hotel, they might not want to walk. They might want to drive. So having them stay off Little Patuxent Parkway. We call this interparcel access. It's a common thing that is recommended in plans and urban design plans around. But there's a difference of opinion on this. So that's something that you'll still, I'm sure, speak of. On the public art, so I mentioned here that not only in the guidelines does it say that the statuary will be, if it's moved, it'll stay at Lakefront. It's on their FTP document. So the FTP, is like the set-down zoning. It goes into the land records. Guidelines are guidelines, but the FTP is really, they have to abide by that. And so I'm happy that it says that if they move them, they've got to keep them at the lakefront, except for the sale, which is on the land that is going to be turned over to the county as that public square. And they haven't found a place at Lakefront that they want to put that. I think they're looking for other places to put it, as I understand it. Linda and I have spoken about this. Her discussion of what's in the downtown-wide guidelines that were adopted in 2010 and what's in the neighborhood guidelines. They're supposed to kind of nest and kind of, be at more detail. And there's nothing in the downtown-wide that says the sculptures shall be in their current spaces. The text says this is a gathering place and amenity place and well-loved and iconic and so forth. And it says it needs to be revitalized. It says that so that more people can use it and so forth. That's what the guidelines at the downtown-wide say. So at the neighborhood now, they've said that they're going to move them, but they may move them and they'll be replaced in time. So I don't have a problem with moving a statuary that's on their land a few feet or wherever they, if they're moving onto our land, obviously, much of the other statuary is on our land, like the peepal tree. So that would be our decision. So I think we've made some movement in this. I think the issues are the two different ones about the statuary and then about the roadway. So I think a lot of times the people are against the roadway, so then a statue being moved is one of the issues. But I do think there are two different issues. So you can be against the road because you don't want it for whatever reason. But moving a statue a few feet, and it's not our statue and it's not on our land, I think it's pretty strong that it says it's going to stay at the lakefront core, and I'm pleased with that because these are iconic things, and certainly we want to make sure that those are still part of our community. Almost all the other issues that I think we had discussed before, I feel have been satisfied, or they're satisfied to the extent that I know that they'll have to be dealt with at the STP. One question I have been asked is about the pathway along Little Patuxent Parkway. So, as I said before, that's shown in several plans. It's on our land, the alignment would be. But the reason it needs to be built is what? Because a developer is building development that then triggers that this pathway should be built. And so at the next stage, they will be coming to talk to CA about getting an easement to build this public multi-use pathway. And I'm pleased with that because, we've worked hard to maintain that right-of-way all these years. And, to get it, we have a sidewalk, but to get a 10-foot wide multi-use pathway along that street is a goal that we've had for a long time.
Help me understand your use of the word trigger there.
So when a roadway is in bad shape or it's functioning at a lower level of service than the county wants, but it's just there, the county either can fix it, or if they can't fix it because they have no right-of-way, there's nothing they can do. But when the next developer comes in and builds adjacent, it triggers a requirement if the county finds something is substandard, like a light, a signal and
You
so
said
forth.
it triggered the pathway.
So it would trigger the requirement for the developer to build that. See, it's on our land, but we're not always going to come out and say, build that pathway right now. Right? We could add millions of dollars to our pocket, but the reason I want to make sure that it was the developer's responsibility. And so I think it's pretty clear, talking to staff and to the applicant and the applicant's consultants, that they understand that will be their responsibility.
And it's not being built on the applicants, as you call them, land? Because
No, we own a huge right-of-way there. So it's sometimes around 40 feet, sometimes a little less. And we have looked at that land in-house previously to see how could a pathway be accommodated. And so they have kept their distance on their land, and now I know for sure that that pathway can be accommodated with all the other right-of-way and other things. So yeah, it has always been shown to be on our property there. It's been in the plan a long time as part of the minibus right-of-way, right? That's really where it stems from. So so I think it is assumed that it'll be on our land. Of course, when they come here, then that's an easement, and my colleagues will be here before you explaining that process.
that might be an easement that we might feel like we could charge for.
You could, and I'm not going to discuss that now. I'm smart enough not to get into that discussion.
Another discussion.
Yeah.
now.
So
Different
I'm
discussion.
here to answer any questions you have.
Dick, any questions?
One of the things they did was extend the lakefront zone over onto the GGP property on, that embankment.
No, they did actually not do that.
They chose not to do that?
No, it only includes their, like the Copeland's lot wasn't part of the core. They say, but they did not go across the street. That's another district, and that has a 15-foot height across the street and 20 foot on the corner.
I was under the impression that the lakefront zone was
It was
put-
expanded on their property to extend closer to Little Patuxent Parkway.
Oh,
No, it does not include anything across the street.
okay.
So that's
Because-
why we can't get at this time, any improvements on that side of the street as far as connections or anything like that. That would be when GGP comes in.
So at this point, there's really no way to connect the mall with the
Right, that's the
lakefront.
next stage when that developer decides to come in. Yeah,
And that developer being GGP.
GGP unless they sell to somebody else, that's correct.
Or their successor.
And, there's news, about who's buying what these days, so who knows in the future who will be the owner.
Mhm. And I take it that Hughes is not making any accommodations for a future bridge over to.
Well, I think they feel that the new lakefront connector will be in the right place. And how that connector works is, again, when that applicant comes in, I think then that'll be worked out. That current bridge is luckily one pedestrian bridge we do not own. And they don't own it either. It's the GGP who owns that pedestrian bridge today.
Well, I was thinking in terms of something a little.
On the surface, right? You're talking
Well,
about the
no.
surface.
I was hoping there'd be some kind of a large bridge across the Little Patuxent so that we could really have like a 20-foot
Right.
wide access to the
So,
mall.
So that's not for this applicant. This is not
my-
part of this application.
My concern is that whatever Hughes builds is pretty much going to determine what can be built in the future. And
I think if you look at where it is, I don't think it's in a bad location on that. You're assuming there is going to be redevelopment on the other side. That's a major project, whether you're going to do a bridge or something that's at street level that gets people from the mall over.
But Hughes hasn't given any thought to it at all.
That's not their responsibility on this.
Okay.
Any other questions for Janet?
I was just curious if there was anything that gave you any concerns in the plan or that wasn't changed that.
I think I asked for more stronger language on the wrapping of the garage underneath, at the Haven parking lot, that's gonna be under that residential tower, and that was done. Because I really was concerned about a naked, ugly garage. And there was good language, but they added more, so I'm, no. I really can't say I have particular concerns. I think some of the details we'll see in the next phase, and I think we have to just keep on this, and I think we've done well doing this so far, but at the site development plan is when we're going to get the programs for these buildings and the parking and, a lot of more detail. We want it now, but I think that's, this is important because it's a block and street plan, but that's very important too.
Alan, do you have a question?
I have to say, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed at least two ways and maybe a third. I can't tell you how many times I heard in my presence and to my face in public and one-on-one meetings, John DeWolf from the applicant say, our job is to follow the plan. We've been given the plan, we're going to follow the plan. That's our guideline, that's what we're going to do. And instead, he's proposing changes. And I'm disappointed in that. I'm disappointed because back in 2010, we were told, I kept saying, and organizations that I was part of kept saying, these guidelines are just guidelines. Anything that's in the general plan is just a guideline. And it's only what's in the zoning that's real. And we were told 9 ways from Sunday, no, it references the zoning in the general plan, so it's got the force of law, it's binding. And now to hear that heights are just a guideline, that's, pardon the expression, BS. And I'm more than disappointed in that we were lied to, and I'm not saying by you, but we were lied to. That nobody ever said, well, this, because they kept trotting out these, here's the height guidelines, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and it can't be more than that here, it can't be more than that there. And people talked it over, fought over it, and they had guidelines, and we were told that's what the height limits. We weren't told these are the height guidelines, these are the height limits. So that's frankly ridiculous, and I'm concerned that at the planning board level, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, that an applicant, whoever, could come in and say, I want to put a 20 whatever story building there, and that's just a guideline that it only says 5 stories there. You can approve that, can't you? And the planning board would have to say, yes, we can approve it because it's not against the law to approve it.
So, yes, I understand what you said. So, if you actually read the plan language and then the zoning language, there's quite a difference from what you were told or heard versus what's in the documents. And it clearly says there's a height, in the plan, the maximum building plan illustrates maximum building heights by neighborhood and sub-area. It is intended to provide planning guidance as to the maximum heights, while recognizing that as overall the redevelopment proceeds, the goal to achieve variety in heights within the neighborhood. So it says planning guidance, and
Planning guidance sounds to me like for the planning board.
Well, that plan, a plan is a guide. It's always a guide. So anything that's a guide or guidance, that's what guidance is. So plans say recommend and zonings shall. So any guidelines highly recommended that, but plans don't shall. There are some things that are backed up by other ordinances, so they kind of have the force of law in some way. But then the zoning regulations allow changes in the building heights to be considered by the planning board, as long as it doesn't go above 20 feet, which was the absolute 20 stories. So it says, an explanation and rationale for any change from the downtown Columbia plan exhibits or any neighborhood documents and materials that were part of the previously approved final development plan. Limits change to building height is allowed based on compatibility, character, height of nearby existing and planned development and redevelopment and open spaces in the area. However, no event shall the maximum height for downtown revitalization exceed 20 stories. So I think it gives guidance to the planning board, and this, I think, is in the staff's report to them, to use this guidance to refine this. So I do think that those decisions about the height were hard fought, and I can remember some of the discussions about the words that you used, what is it? That it was
That the general plan is a recommendation?
No,
and
the other one that you said that was law. Some other words that you used at that time, I forgot
and
what
that
they
the
were.
zoning is law.
It was entitled or whatever. So the zoning is law, and in general, now plans in this community are pretty strong, right? The council, the planning board, they uphold the plan. It's not like some communities, some places where it's not a very strong document.
I understand that's your opinion.
Yeah, well, I've worked around the country, so I can tell you there are a lot of places when they don't like the plan, they always have things in line with the plan, but they change the plan every moment. This county, they do it on a cycle and so forth. So I understand that difficulty in understanding it, and when I went back to read the plan again on this issue, I had to give you this information in September because, I had to refresh my own mind. So I think it's a lesson, and a learning about how plans are used, and that they are guides. I think it's strong language on the 20 for sure, and then they give the planning board guidance, so they'll have to discuss this at the planning board under this guidance and decide, if a difference of that 50 feet in these two areas, as now constrained, is in alignment in character.
Before I move on, because you did say that the height part of this plan has been approved by whoever needs to approve it?
No.
No,
Yeah,
okay.
the
So
planning
you said
board
it's
does
now
that.
constrained. I thought, okay, so.
As constrained, and the planning staff has reviewed the application. The applicant has said that they are going to modulate the height, so not one big building, and then only 50% of those two areas.
So the learning for
Now, the
me,
planning board has to approve that.
I get that. So the learning for me is that people say what they have to say to make a buck. Because
So-
that's what we were told before.
Yeah, I don't
We
know
were
who
told,
told
I
you.
can't tell you how many times we were told by Howard Hughes, we need to play nice with the county because if we don't, they won't approve our plans.
Very much.
And now you're saying that the county can't do anything but approve their plans. It
No, I
it
think
doesn't make
the
sense.
county can
So
approve
my,
them, but they
my
don't have to.
I get you. My third, I'm not sure if I'm disappointed, is with you/CA, and not you as an individual necessarily, but how we're approaching this. I said, however many months ago it was, that I wanted you to take a more activist advocating approach. I appreciate the parts that you did advocate for. It feels to me like a lot more could have been done. And so that's where I'm not sure if I'm disappointed or not.
Ginny, do you have a question for?
Yes, I do. Jane, in listening to you, I'm not clear on whether the constraint is the height or the number of stories. Because as you said before, if you're the first floor could be pretty high if you're talking about retail,
Right.
and then you could put 19 more stories above that. So which is the constraint in the zoning, height or stories?
I think it's both. So, you can't have more than 15 stories, and it can't be more than 170 feet.
170.
So, because, I think,
Okay.
yeah, so you'll have, if it's commercial stories, there'll be fewer of them than there would be if they were residential. But I think they have both conditions. So you couldn't go 13 stories just because it fits in 170, which it wouldn't. But,
Dick, you
yeah,
have a
you
question?
couldn't go 16.
Yeah, since the building heights seem to have been a suggestion, what about the rest of the plan, the guidelines, the 2010 guidelines? Are they equally irrelevant?
So the guidelines, I think this is part of the downtown process that might be looked at again as the county looks at its zoning, because each applicant, we have these guidelines for downtown, and then look at the size of these guidelines for this neighborhood, right? So that they're required to do, right? I have looked, I've read these. I skimmed the updated ones where they had made changes. For the amenity areas, like areas that we care about particularly, the open space, I think these are, more detailed.
Are they
But-
binding?
Pardon?
Are they binding?
Yeah, guidelines are guilines. No.
So they're not binding.
No,
So
guidelines are
this
not
whole-
binding
this
unless
whole-
they're
this whole
written
thing could
into an agreement or it's, part. It may be that they could have a note on the FDP, on something like the statues not being removed from the lakefront. So some things, are in ink on there. But guidelines are guidelines. So if you want something for sure in planning and zoning, it has to be a regulation. And, you know, you can't write the regulations so tight,
I have a quick yes, no.
so.
Alan, quick yes, no.
I forget which one of you, I think you said that Howard Hughes was required to do the neighborhood guidelines. Is it true that because we own property in that neighborhood, we could have done the guidelines?
Yes,
Thank you.
so they would have had to agree to them.
So do we have to agree to them?
Well, we have, as staff, we have gotten drafts of these before they were public, and we reviewed them related to particularly our property. 'cause
Does
that's-
CA need to agree to it?
No.
So why would they need to agree to it if we did it?
Well, I mean, if you're the applicant, we're not the applicant. So if we had become the applicant, we would have had to have done the guidelines and paid for those, which we had to do in another application. All of the neighborhood plan, the implementation plan. So we would have done all of those. We would have to coordinate with them because they are the other landowners. So the way the regulations are written in the zoning and that the guidelines pertain to all the development.
Would
Now-
we have to coordinate with them in a different way than they coordinated with us?
No. But we wouldn't, we're not the applicant, so unless, are we proposing something? So if we were the first ones in, yes. So if we had the money to do lakefront core the way we'd like to, whatever way that is, you know, freshen it up, we would have had to spend, and this costs big money, and it's onerous for any person, any smaller entity like ourselves, or a person who owns one parcel in a big neighborhood, to have to do a plan for everyone else's land. And that's what this is. I mean, the detailed guidelines, you know, all of the planters and the specs in here, this is hundreds of pages. So yes, you're right, we could have done it if we were the applicant. You just don't volunteer to do it when you're not the applicant.
Ginny, did
Yeah, do you know if Howard Hughes has any plans in terms of environmental conservation or anything with the
Yes.
building? Could you at some point share that with us?
Yeah.
Not tonight, but
So, yes, okay.
and same with the parking garages, you know.
Yeah, so they have, all the stormwater details are at the next stage. They have a detailed stormwater management plan and that they have to do. But also, all the regulations downtown are quite sustainable. So they have to, you know, all the water has to be retained on site and so forth.
Well,
we don't-
solar energy, other stuff.
all
we're
of that.
looking for.
All of that is, now the standard of LEED is not designated, as I recall, in downtown, but it's supposed to be, you know, green buildings. So, yeah, we can do that some other time, just a refresher on the
And the
environment.
parking garages too, something a little more creative than just concrete and.
Yeah, so the ones
Okay.
in
right.
the
Some
buildings
other
we've
time.
been discussing would be totally wrapped by, except their entrances, by development. You know what I'm talking about? So like at the Metropolitan,
Got
you
it.
cannot see the garage. So
Got it.
those I'm not worried about.
Okay.
I was worried about the one in the lower level of the Whole Foods parking lot where that the first few floors would be parking deck with a residential building. And you wouldn't see that from Little Patuxent Parkway because of the grade, but you would see it from our pathway,
Okay.
and visitors would see that. And so we wanted to make sure that that was properly screened. And I think we'll get that.
Okay. So I'd like the board to consider, next February 1st is the hearing, and I would like the board to seriously consider going in opposition of the extension of Wynkoop Circle.
I so move.
I mean, part of me says we had kind of this discussion, back when this was all done, and also I'm not sure I see a benefit either to us or our residents. It's worked without it being extended, and I think that if it isn't extended, then you suddenly have an open space, a green space that goes all the way from Little Patuxent Parkway down to the lake with no roads or anything. And so I think there's a variety of reasons that, and let's face it, if you're a pedestrian, you're trying to cross a street to get to the lakefront. I mean, it just adds another difficulty. I mean, is in my view, and I would prefer if we could just have that kind of continuous connection where people could walk all the way from Little Patuxent down to the lake without having to worry about crossing the street. So I really would like the board to consider that we oppose.
consider it, or can we vote on it?
Well, yeah, we can, yeah,
Can we legally vote on it?
yes, we
now?
can, because I put it on the agenda as
Okay.
discussion and
Well,
vote.
then I would like to
but-
move that we do
okay.
that.
Okay, so Dick moved that we go on opposition to the extension of Winnecopen Circle, and Alan seconded. Is there any discussion?
Well, is there?
I just wanted to
some
say
point
that
of view that we
there
should
are
be
some
hearing?
valid reasons for having it. I hear what you're saying, and I like the idea of continuous green space as well, but it's very tedious to get on and off of Little Patuxent, and so, you know,
You have to wait. You have to wait, one way or the other.
yeah, I think like in terms of convenience, a slow drive along there would be a lot more convenient than pulling out and pulling back in, pulling out and pulling back in. So I think for the flow down there, it could actually be beneficial because traffic in that area is already not great. It doesn't flow very well, and adding the number of people that could potentially be added is not going to improve that situation. So, you know, I'm a little torn, I have to say, because I see the value in this road, and I can't say one way or the other which way would work better. But I do know that that area is not fun to drive in for me personally, and I can't imagine I'm alone. So, just, you know, devil's advocate.
Jenny?
Yeah, I assume Jane would be the right person to ask this question. You've been studying this for years. What's your opinion? I mean, I feel like I'm not getting the other side, or if there is
so
another
I do
side.
see value for the same reason that Janet said. You know, it's a very narrow, as narrow as possible for a road to connect. You know, what's going to be a large activity center. You know, they have the Sheraton area. You know, all the way over to Whole Foods, and that you know, most people will be walking one day, but people are still driving, and to have that convenience. Just as Janet said, for internal circulation, so you don't go out on the main road, which is already congested at certain hours. Eventually, there'll be a signal at one of those Wincopens, you know, another signal. So I think enough to contribute to that. I do think, you know, that maybe there's a middle ground where you could recommend that the road be as narrow as possible, you know, to reduce impacts on the open space, whatever your concern is. But I would, as an urban planner, say that it is something that you know, if I was making the decision or I was on the planning board, I would recommend approval.
You would recommend what?
I would recommend approval of it being a road that is private. If the specifications are now that we special paving, so it doesn't look like a real road, you know what I'm talking about. It's using brick or some other paving, and also it would be one kind of maybe a raised. I don't know if they haven't done the detailed design, but it wouldn't be like with curbs and so forth. So it can be a festival space, and it's owned by the developer, so they could close it for events. The DAP said it should be mostly pedestrianized. They had some funny equation, didn't really make sense. 70% pedestrian, 30% cars. But I think that the staff has agreed, the planning staff has agreed with that. So I would say it's a necessary and good improvement.
No.
Jane, when I read it, it wasn't, maybe it's the SDP level, but it didn't say whether it's going to be two-way or one-way.
Yeah, it's two-way.
It's two-way. Well,
yeah.
if it's two-way, it's going to have to be a certain width.
Yes, but as a private street, they have a special street section, so you know it's as small as the county would permit it, and it will have. Parking is only on the building side, you know, because they want to activate that for retail users. So I understand that it is a tight fit, and I think Andy has raised that issue. But I do think
just to make
is there
sure.
parking along that road?
there
So
would
is there
be.
parallel
They have
parking?
proposed parking next to their new building in that section at the street. As when I look at the section, but not on both sides. Just at the building entrance.
So I'm not sure if the board is aware, but when we're talking about the road and the road bed, where it goes, according to the FDP, if you're familiar with the space, is the sidewalk and the hedge area. That is the road bed. That is where the road will go if you go down to the fountain. It does not go in the parking lot.
Yeah.
It goes in the sidewalk area. That will be the basis of the road. So it'll be very, very close, really close to our plaza, which is another reason why I'm not really thrilled, because if you see their diagrams that they submitted, you basically will step off the plaza right into the road. That's the way they have their diagram up on from what they submitted to DAP.
I mean, I will say that shared pedestrian vehicular traffic space has worked successfully in other places. I'm not sure I give the way people drive around here that much credit, unfortunately.
Well,
However, you know, it may be that we could request considerable traffic calming and those sorts of things so that those cars are driving 10 miles per hour or less. But, you know, I share your concern. That is very close. And
Milton?
One thing you could do if it goes in, for example, Market Street in Reston Town Center is all brick pavers, and so that automatic put the limits on how fast the cars can move.
Yeah.
Two things. One is I appreciate Andy. For me, it was my opposition to that road has always been more about its proximity to our plaza. I'm appreciating your sense of the swath from all the way down without having to cross a road. But I also want to remind us all that we are not the decision makers. We need to be advocates. I'm told often by my political mentors that don't negotiate with yourself. We should be advocating for the best position we want and then let the powers that be negotiate down. But if they know what we want, that we oppose the road, that doesn't mean the road's not going to happen. It just means they're going to have that information in their decision-making process that hopefully will make it more palatable. If we start bargaining with ourselves, well, what if we ask for this? What if we ask for that? And then they bargain down from that. Then we're
6-lane highway.
then we're going the wrong direction.
Jenny?
But listening to you, I have an idea here. Maybe one proposal would be if this board decides to vote to not build the road, it is just an opinion. You're right. The planning board will make the decision, and maybe the zoning board as well. But if we should lose that, would we want to use this opportunity to say, we oppose the road, but if you're going to approve it, we have these conditions that, like Janet's talking about, Milton's talking about, to make it, if you do, it's safer. Jane's talking about. It's giving, I know it sounds like that's a weaker position because we're saying we oppose the road, but if you're going to do it, here's this. It sounds like, maybe we do. Maybe we have some really good ideas about how this could be a better road if it's done, as opposed to either or, black or white, road or no road. I don't know. It's just an idea.
Dick?
Well, as Alan pointed out, we're negotiating with ourselves. If we go in and say no road, then they have to come back and say, well, we'll put the road in, but we'll put this, we'll do that, we'll put brick pavers down, we'll narrow the road, we'll do all these other things, and then we can say, well, yeah, maybe, but we don't go in and with a weak position. We don't go in saying, you can build your road, but we want it this way. You just go in and say, we don't want the road. And then let them come back with
You don't have to come back, Dick.
They will. I don't know who the they is, Dick, that would come back because you're testifying before the planning board. Howard Hughes says, whoever, I assume, we need the road, and we say, we don't think you do. There's no negotiating there. It's more like, if we have these ideas, I don't see the harm, frankly, in presenting them. I don't think that weakens our position. I think it's sort of a reality of this is sort of where we are. We don't want I'm not saying I agree with we don't want the road. I'm saying if that's this board's position, we're giving also an intelligent approach. Should that not be what the planning board does, here's something that makes it safer if you do the road. I don't think that's weak, actually, is sort of the way I feel about it. Because there's
Alan?
nobody to negotiate with at that point except the planning board.
Alan?
I guess I hear you, Jenny, and I don't think we have any more expertise than the planning board and the Department of Planning and Zone pavers and narrowness. They'll think of all that. I don't think we have any ideas that they are already thinking. I mean, January talked about them making the road as narrow as possible. So those are already in the works. The bricks are already in the works. So yeah, I mean, Milton talked about it being bricks with a slow. So I just think we're
It's in the works.
They're talking about some type of pavers.
so anyway. I don't.
Okay. Any more discussion? Lynn?
Yeah. No, it's interesting because, I think we're all looking at it as it is now. And when you add I think as Janet said, when you add the extra density, when you add, there will be a need for a definite, way to get from one place to another. I'm sure that they've all, again, this, as Jane said, it makes sense in urban planning. We can oppose it, we can okay it, we can not take a position if we don't think we know enough. But somehow to sit there and make recommendations, we too are not urban planners. I want to go to the hearing.
Okay, any more discussion? If not, I'll take the vote on the question. So the motion is that we go on opposition to the extension of Winnicopin Circle. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstain? Ginny?
You have to do something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, motion fails because it's 3-3-0.
I abstained.
Oh, sorry, 3-3-1. Alan?
Yeah, I propose we go on the record as opposing the allowing of higher than 9-story buildings in the lakefront core.
Second. Is there a second? Okay, anything else? All right, I think we're done then. Thank you. Okay, consent agenda. They're approved. Approval of the minutes and the appointment of the King's Contrivance. Transfer of capital funds in the watershed-related projects. Is there a motion to
So moved.
accept those recommendations? Is there a second? Second, Janet, seconded. Okay.
Ginny.
So Jenny moved and Janet seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Looks like it's unanimous, except Chow will put abstained. Okay, request for easement, Rivers Corporate Park. Is there a motion to?
So moved.
Is there a second? Lynn. So Ginny moved, Lynn seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Except for Chow. Okay, request for easement, BG&E utility easement. Is there a motion to grant that easement? Dick moved. Is there a second?
A second.
Chow seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of that? Unanimous. Request for utility easement, Meriwether Post. Is there a motion to grant that? Chow. Is there a second? Ginny seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Request for easement, north side of parcel D, Is there a motion to grant that easement? Lynn moved. Is there a second? Ginny seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. And request for the easement for the other part of parcel D, northwest, southeast, southwest. Is there a motion? Chow moved. Is there a second? Lynn seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we get on to recommended options for monitoring community efforts in environmental climate. Milton, you want to?
Jeremy, front and center, please.
Wake up, Jeremy.
I guess I just brought you up in case the board has any questions. I do not know where the board wants to go with this. The staff made a recommendation last time. You said you wanted, this is an opportunity for the board. There was not a lot of discussion at the last opportunity. This is an opportunity for the board to have a discussion.
Well, I just wanted to share that I shared this with, did you get a copy of this? Yeah. Jeremy?
I can't tell what you're holding up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Parameters for a possible citizens climate advisory and outreach committee.
I have not. Honestly,
well, at any rate, we got it on our agenda, not for a board vote, but to just share with the village board. I know Sherry did that too with King's Contrivance. At least she told me they were very receptive, and I had the same thing with my board. They just loved the idea of a separate climate advisory committee. They had no problem with their not being involved in appointing, like they recommend to the watershed committee. I know we do the final appointing, but they recommend. They had no problem with not being involved in that. They really seem to feel that you need people that really understand this issue and have that expertise, and that you need the partnerships with the other organizations and their representatives, and perhaps a liaison, one or two from the watershed committee on this committee, so that you get that coordination, but you wouldn't really. I think your recommendation was to put this all in the watershed committee, which, in talking with some people, our rep from there, they're trying to struggle with, what do I do? What is, what should I be doing? How can we meet more often? How can we get more members? And at least our rep says we've got a lot of projects as it is, and she has an idea for a different project. She wants to talk to, wherever John McCoy went, and I guess Dennis. So some of them perhaps, see this as one, but certainly not the ones I've been talking to that just see it should be separate, different responsibilities. So that's, at any rate, I just wanted to share that with you guys. And I'm sorry, I should get you a copy. Maybe we could pass that down to him.
I'm sorry, I thought did you have any?
No, I don't have any comments.
Jenny.
This one.
Oh, I mean, I thought I had extra.
Alan?
Procedurally, where are we on this?
Well, it's up for discussion, possible vote, but I mean, no one's made any recommendation because I'm not sure we're quite yet.
Oh, I don't think we should. I don't think we should be voting tonight. I think it should be in February. I think we need a little more.
February, our budget.
Yeah, but
So let me ask the board, because we have a couple of ideas out there. One is to enhance the watershed committee, okay, with this responsibility.
mm-hmm.
So another is to create a climate advisory, okay, and keep the watershed committee separate. Another possibility, which staff has recommended, is that we look at a broader focus and create an environmental sustainability committee, which would also have the climate outreach, etc., as part of it, but could address other things. So why don't we as a board kind of figure out which direction we want to go? Alan?
Okay, a couple of things. My feeling is that without intending to do it, I know our intentions have been good. We have done everything we can to weaken our advisory committees. We hear from them sort of all at once in one meeting. We don't actively solicit their advice when an issue comes up that's in their purview. These are supposed to be advising the board, and we don't use them well. So it's no surprise to me that we've heard it from Dan, we've heard it now from, I don't know if it's from Jeremy or from who, that the watershed committee is struggling. That's not a surprise to me. I think we need to do a better job of making these advisory functions. The board, need to do a better job of making these utilizing these advisory committees. That said, also, secondly, separate from that, to me, watershed and climate are very different things. And so there's obviously interrelationships with everything. The climate interfaces with what happens with golf courses. And so, they're all interrelated, but to me, there's such a different focus that I don't see. I think the watershed is a specific thing that if we want to continue to get advice from people, from the community around that, we should keep that function separate from a more expert panel that is helping us with climate change.
Ciao.
Yeah, I think I agree with Alan. I support an independent or separate citizen climate advisory committee. I think that the struggle in the watershed committee probably comes with various reasons, and they have difficulty recruiting members. I remember in our village, they have difficulty to recruit members as well. And I think probably sometimes the committee have very active because there's some issues. So if there are no issues, people will not be so active. And because now we see they're very active citizens, they want to participate. I think we should give them a try. Just create a separate committee for that. And see after 2 years, if everything works well and the board got a great opinion or advisory from them, that would be great. If not, we can do some, or change something and then merge with the other committees. So I support that.
Janet?
So I essentially support the same idea too. And, I mentioned Tim's email to me about the local versus global, and I think Tim categorized it as sort of inward versus outward. I think those are essentially the same thing, that the Climate Change Committee is more of an outward facing, and CA is positioned as a leader, but takes that one step further, and I see a lot of benefit to that. And I would also see them working in conjunction, though, with the Watershed Committee, because there may be things that they can cross-pollinate with each other that can benefit both and benefit our community, but then also, have that expertise focusing on the sort of bigger picture as far as climate change is concerned.
Yeah.
Jenny, what do you think?
I actually agree with everything that my colleagues have said so far.
Dick?
I look at this as being one big issue, which is the environment. And there's a lot of things that it covers. They're all interrelated. Climate change is part of the issue. Watershed is part of the issue. Sustainability is part of the issue. I see this as all being something that could be under one committee, just the environmental committee, and let them take it from there.
Can I ask Dick a question?
Okay. Yeah. Alan?
Currently, the Watershed Committee is basically volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
The proposal for this committee is to look at more expertise. So what's your position when you think of this environmental committee? Are you thinking it to be more along the model of the watershed, where it's whoever volunteers and gets approved gets on, or is it really a seeking of expert opinion?
I see this as a volunteer committee, and we have staff here who would interface with it and provide the expertise.
So, let me ask you.
Oh.
All our committees are volunteer.
Okay, to me,
I wasn't sure.
There's a difference to me between one from every village.
That's
obviously
totally
they're
different.
volunteer.
That's
but
how you structure the membership.
but it's also
all volunteers.
what's the criteria for membership?
Sure. Yeah.
And obviously they're going to volunteer or not. I mean that's or
Okay.
not. That's given.
So it's the criteria for membership is what you're
Criteria for
talking
membership. Yeah.
about. Okay, because that's very different than.
That's what I was intending to communicate. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
So
Sounds
that was so his
Well,
question was more.
my answer to that would be I would expect people with expertise or certainly a strong interest in the subject to be the people who would volunteer for the committee, and there are probably people also with some strong opinions who'd be volunteering. But again, we have people on the staff here who have the expertise and who can work with the committee, get the input from the committee, how the community feels about some of these issues. These are also the eyes and ears for our staff, to point out problems that they see as they use our facilities or walk the trails or whatever. But I'd like to keep it open to interested people in the community.
Lynn.
I tend to agree with Alan on this. We do have staff with expertise, but this would be a chance to get more expertise in areas where we don't have it. So I think it's a fairly unique opportunity to really expand what we do.
Jim.
And I think along those lines, it does make sense for the Watershed Committee and for sort of the grassroots effort to have, or at least, have the goal of having someone representative from each village, whereas I feel like the Climate Advisory would not be village, to Alan's point, the membership structure should not be each village gives one person. I think it should be qualified people who have this expertise in our community and are willing to volunteer their time can come together, and I think the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts in terms of that kind of collaboration.
I didn't want to. I'm not saying it has to be one person from each village. I think it should be people who, representing the community as a whole. That would be my feeling.
Okay, I'd like to say that I kind of lean a little bit more toward Dick's in the sense that I would prefer, even if we have like two committees, and if we keep the Watershed Committee, we create a second committee, that committee had a broader focus more on the environment, more on the environmental sustainability, of which climate is an important part, but there are other things too that we could probably use advisory help on. So, if we do go down the route, I would really want to seriously consider kind of broadening the scope to more of the environment than just fixing the climate. Okay, Alan, you had your hand.
Yeah, I'm actually probably okay with that, and I could be convinced. I'd like to, if there are people on the board or in the community who feel strongly, I'd like to hear more expert information about that. But to me, environment, sustainability, climate is all part of the same thing. There is a real difference for me between interest and knowledge. And I love people with interest and passion in certain areas. But interest and passion, if we're really trying to get, if I look at some of the scope, to be the force multiplier, to advise the board on trends and best risk management practice, and several of these other things. And Jeremy's wonderful, but he's only one. And John's great, he's only one. I really would want to see this not just as these are the people with passion in the community, but people with real expertise in the community.
So I'm getting a sense from the board that prefer two committees. This would keep the watershed committee as it is, and create a second committee, kind of either climate or environmental focus. So what I suggest is we turn it over to staff to put together the charter for the new committee. They've heard our discussions. They have our ideas, and then they can bring it back. Just like we normally do when we create a committee, we get a charter that lays out all those details. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
Well, is there, can we sort of set a time frame there so we can
The
keep
goal
this?
is next board meeting in February.
Okay, for a vote.
Yeah, for them to bring it back.
So when would we actually be able to see a draft in case there are any differences of opinions? Or
Jeremy, I'm going to put you on the spot. Working with it, starting with this information and the information that you shared with me in email, could we develop a draft charge for the work session in February?
No, not the work session. The meeting. The meeting. We can't do the work session. The work session is totally budget. We're gonna.
Well, I wanted to get you. I want to get you a draft charge before you take a vote on something.
Maybe they could just send it.
Okay.
You could just send it to us.
Email would be fine.
What are the? I'm sorry. What are the dates we're talking about?
Well, forget about the work session. The work session is February the 8th.
Right.
So
February
we're
8th.
focused more on the board meeting on the 22nd. So would the board be comfortable if we get it to you in writing via email a week in advance of the board meeting?
Sure. Is that enough time, or do we need maybe 10 days or something? I guess I see it as a slam dunk now because we've got this.
Oh yes, of course.
And
It's already written.
actually, before we did a rewrite of the watershed committee with the charter, which incorporates a lot of this, but so I'm looking at it from a different perspective. Is
Sure.
it possible?
I think turning around a charter would be very quick. There are a couple drafts floating around. In fact, I have one of my own that I've already written. I think the one question would come in is any opportunity to incorporate feedback from the board in advance. And so,
that's what I'm
how would
The sooner
how,
you can get it to us, the better from that
right?
point of view.
But I don't know if there's a formal process for that, or if there's just
Let's just try if you can get
Yeah.
10 days before the
Sure.
board meeting.
Email.
We can do
We'll,
it 10 days before
we'll
the
work
board
for
meeting.
towards 10 days prior to the February 22nd board meeting.
With some deadline in there that when we get it, we have to respond with
Yes.
feedback by a certain date. To be fair to Jeremy, who
right.
has to
Well,
then, yeah.
because there's the week in advance for your packages, so technically it
Right.
goes.
So we've got to be responsive.
We may
to
need more
what
than
you-
10 days actually to get.
So if you remember, we have to post this a week in advance. So it will be posted the Friday before the meeting. So that's the deadline to at least have it out so that the public can see what the proposal is.
What we're looking at, because
Yes.
just
right.
because it's in the packet doesn't mean it can't be amended.
Oh, yeah.
So
And
that's-
we could still discuss it and other things. But for the public, so the public knows what the basis of the discussion is going to be. So that's the key date. Everything has to be in by that Friday so that we can get it out
Thursday meeting.
Yes.
for the.
Which is why I appreciate what you're just saying, that we would have it a week before that so that we would be responsible to getting changes back to you. So
Exactly,
that what
yes.
goes in that Friday thing has been refined a little bit more.
Yeah.
But understand that, I mean,
Not a final.
just because I want to change doesn't mean that automatically gets incorporated. If you want to change, but it does give us a chance to weigh in.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially if we reply to all, it may be, hey, that's a great idea. I support that. And if a bunch of us. Yeah, I see your point.
Dick only looks at his CA mail every once a month, so it's
Twice a month, once.
Okay, does it make sense? I mean, got it. Okay, so that's what we'll do.
Okay.
And instead, short turnaround. When you get it, if you have comments, make them and CC the board. Just as CC. And we're not no discussion. Remember, we're not discussing this through email. This is just your comments back to a point of contact.
Okay.
And then you can just, as a courtesy copy, CC the rest of the board.
I don't think you can outlaw discussion on email.
Well, anyway, okay.
Well, I'm going to try. I'm going to try.
That's a very noble.
As long as we don't vote by email.
We're not voting. Oh, no, we are not voting by email.
I'm being
Okay. All right. Thank you. The next item is I would like a motion to hold a closed meeting of the Board of Directors on February 8th following our work session. Oh, give me a chance here just to kind of follow the official rules here. Meeting would be closed pursuant to sections 3 and 4, consultation with legal counsel on legal matters, and consultation with staff personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. I did kind of send out a very brief, it came up very fast, but there are a couple of things the board needs to know. So is there a motion first for that?
Second.
Jenny second. All right. So now, discussion. Alan.
For me, it's real clear. Those, whatever you call them, sections, whatever, that you're under section 3,
Right.
whatever, those are the floor. Those are what allows us to close a meeting.
Yes. Yep.
It does not require us to close a
Nope.
meeting. And so far, I haven't, for me, the reason why I would vote to close the meeting is if I was convinced that the public knowing what we were hearing would harm Columbia, citizens of Columbia, and by extension, therefore, the Columbia Association. And so far from what you said, I haven't heard that. So I need more data to know why this would harm us.
Because I just got some more information. A lawsuit has been filed, so we will talk about the lawsuit.
That a lawsuit that we are involved in or potentially involved in? Okay, thank you.
Sherry, is that correct?
A lawsuit has been filed.
That's all, and it concerns us. That's it.
To which CA is a party.
I just found out about that earlier.
I have a question.
So we need to have a closed meeting so the board can discuss this. Yes.
So if the lawsuit filed, will that be public information already?
But not our.
What we're going
to do about it. That's what's the discussion.
I don't want to give that away.
We're not going to do that in an open meeting.
Okay.
Sorry. So.
Okay, but that's helpful.
Sure.
Exchange
Yeah.
there.
Well, it's happening very fast. Much faster. This wasn't planned.
Well, is February 8th time enough?
Yes, it is
Okay.
time. It'll get everything ready. So we have a motion to close the meeting February 8th. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're on to board discussion. Organization to invite for the April stakeholders dinner. Each year we're supposed to kind of list. I would like to recommend that we invite an organization or two organizations we haven't done before. One is the Board of Directors of the Howard Community College, because we do a bunch of things with them. We haven't met with them before, and they're a very important part of the community. And the second is kind of in a similar lane, the Executive Board for the Howard County General Hospital, which once again, an important community institution. We don't have as much in terms of interaction, but I just think that those would be two organizations that we could benefit. What do you think?
Yeah, I apologize. I'm new. I just would like to you give me 3 or 4 sentences on the purpose of the stakeholders dinner. Why are we doing it? That'll help in terms of what groups to invite. What's the purpose? I mean, it's a CA board, CA staff,
board and the
board.
CA staff. It's the board and the staff meeting in a congenial.
Like we did with the
The village
The
chair.
village
The villages, we meet,
Yeah, we have 4 of them a year.
we have 4 of them each year.
Is there any presentation, or is
Nope.
just this
Nope, it's
everybody
just-
get together and
Social
talk?
guidance.
Okay,
So
I got it.
It's, we have 4 of them. One is with the state and local officials.
Yeah, I
second is
got it.
village, the
I got it.
third
So
is
this
the
is
chamber, and
just
the fourth
okay.
we're approving.
Got it.
I will
Okay.
say, I miss the days when Dick was chair of whatever committee that was, because at those stakeholder dinners, we didn't have presentations, but we did ask people to have, while they're being convivial, to have a little bit of discussion about issues that were in common and how they felt about it. We didn't tell them what the issues had to be. It was just talk a little bit about how we might work together and what you're looking forward to, and then briefly asked each table just to say a word. It was very informal. It was very relaxed. It was not a presentation. There were no bullet points, no charts, no PowerPoint. And I thought that was, it made it more than just, two things it did. One, it made it more than just let's sit and eat. And secondly, it allowed people who were at one table and not eating with others to hear a little bit from others, so that it expanded our purview of who we're eating with than just the people at our table.
Yeah, I kind of would appreciate something like that, in that, Howard General Hospital might say, these are our big issues, 3 or 4 of them. HCC might say, these are our concerns. At least we'd all get the same feeling, in case we're sitting next to somebody that's not very talkative or something. I'm kidding. I mean, it's just...
Right, but just remember, we have to...
Not a lot of time on it, but I think there's a way of doing it.
People seem to enjoy it. I mean, people, it was not pulling
There were
teeth to get
mixed
people.
reviews,
No,
I heard some
it was
people
not
say
enjoyed
this
by
year.
it because I got some
God, we
feedback
don't have
about
to do
it.
that.
Yeah.
I really like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
What was the problem?
It was a dinner setting, and it was thought to be an informal. That if I have you have an option. The feedback I got, you choose who you want to sit with, and so if I choose to sit with whomever, why do I have to share my conversation with everyone else? If you wanted to sit with a particular person because you wanted to have a conversation with that particular person, then you have the option to sit with that person.
And there was no obligation to share any conversation. So it was just a matter of, it was very bounded, very specific, and very choiceful in terms of what anybody shared. Nobody had to share anything.
Actually, what I was thinking more was a representative of whatever group that's invited would just maybe at the beginning of the meeting just share what their top 2 or 3 issues are, just as an educational thing. I don't know.
That's another way of doing it. Tables could talk about it.
Like hospital. The emergency room is a problem. We're planning on expanding. You sort of learn more about the organization. Yeah, you might pick that up depending on the people you're sitting with, but I don't know. And it wouldn't take more than, depending on how many organizations, you give them each 2 minutes.
Let Dick,
Okay.
Milton, and myself talk about
We
it.
don't
in our
have to
meetings.
solve it now.
No, we don't have to solve
Well,
it. But is that okay?
I think there are 2 pieces here. One is what the format is, and we can discuss
Yeah, we
that.
can discuss it.
The other thing is the 2 choices, and I think you made a couple of good ones. I wonder if you
Choices
made
are
one.
great.
Yeah, actually, I was trying to think of choices, and I'm not opposed to those. But the only thing I was thinking was something like, and I don't know that much about this organization, but the organization Fern or something like that, where
Yeah, it's a good one to keep in the future, yeah.
I was only thinking that, some of our community services may overlap or complement what they do, and so it might be something to keep.
It's similar to that. We might think about the Association of Community Services down the line. Right, so that's good. Those are good ideas to kind of keep, I think, for...
Of course, Fern is sort of topical.
I think I would like to invite the DPZ people or
DPC.
yes, I think it's
Planning is
they're volunteers, right?
Yeah.
Some of them volunteers,
Yeah.
or design advisory committee DAP, right? They're volunteers.
We shouldn't be doing that. It's almost like we're trying to influence them.
Yeah.
We need to influence them, right? So
How are we trying to influence the board, the
How about
Chamber
the
of
Board of
Commerce?
Edu- how about the
Why are we
Board of
doing this? We're not
Education?
trying to
But
influence.
no, they don't have official capacity, though. The Design Review Board have as an official capacity.
And they're no fun at a dinner.
I'm
kidding.
No.
I'm kidding.
The other group, and I'm fine with the two that you presented for this time, but, and I know I know the staff has some other ways to meet with them and honor them, but it just occurred to me, like when you mentioned, it's like the people who run some of our programs, the people who work for us, they don't get a lot of face time with the board, and I would think, doesn't have to be every year, but once in a while for us to host the people who run our after-school programs or whatever, and that there'd be a way to honor them. It'd be a way to, not all of them who work in it, but
It was great. When we had the presentation, it was great seeing the open space staff, the Dennis's people.
So we've got the list here of those.
That's
as
quite a few
possible
people.
for the future.
You've got about 20, 30 people in.
Yeah, but
wouldn't be everybody.
we try to keep it to a small number that goes through.
Good group.
All right, so we'll go with Chamber and Hospital this time, and we have the others on the list for future.
And HCC.
Community College and Hospital.
They're great.
Right.
Good.
Okay.
You said Chamber.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I meant Howard Community College and the hospital. Okay. Next up, CA dashboard.
Is that a vote, or we just sort of we're all in agreement?
We just all agree.
Okay. Good.
Nope. The dashboard.
Susan.
Poor Susan.
Well, Dan's going to chime in also.
Yeah, I just would entertain any questions that you might have. I just one thing that I wanted to make sure that you knew that we followed up on from the previous quarter, and the membership market share. If you look at the bottom of that page, which I think it's the third page of the dashboard.
Could you number these in the future, please?
Sure. What was I going to say? So the question that we had been asked was whether or not the number of memberships included memberships where there were more than one membership per household, that we might be overstating the market share, but that was not the case. So the resident membership in column B, it's only one membership per household. And we looked at how many memberships there are or how many memberships per household where there's more than one membership type, excluding the obvious ones like Haven add-ons and things. There's only 73 as of the end of the thing. I thought we didn't allow that. There's some like old ones that haven't come off yet with their renewals and things like that. So and then there's been some exceptions made if people have complained.
Anything else you want to say, Susan, before I open up the questions? Any
no, I don't know
comments?
if there's anything, Dan, you want to present about the
So, before we move off of this membership,
yes.
All right.
I just
Alan?
We had a resident tell us her story that her belief was that she was being charged more for as a single parent and a minor child than if it had been a two-parent household, and I'd like to know what our response is to that.
I believe, first of all, it wasn't a resident.
Is that the one where the spouse died?
We received that. I think it came from Jenny and whatever. We're looking at that because number one, we found out that she is not a resident of the community, but also we're looking at our system because we realize that if we can't do that unilaterally without considering that maybe we may get other requests. So right now we're looking at how we can accommodate that request.
I appreciate that, because if that's true, that just as having been a single parent, that would be not a good thing. And I guess I just want to, not a time for discussion, but I just want to renew. I still fail to see why, if there were two adults in a household and they had different interests, they couldn't each purchase a different membership. That just boggles my mind that we can't accommodate that. So.
Good point.
Okay, Dan, anything you want to say? Chow?
So I look at the market share number. It seems it keeps dropping, right? Is that the last column? The market share?
Yeah.
Excluding Columbia cars?
So
keep dropping from 41% to 34%.
Well,
That is a significant drop.
part of the reason that it's dropping is that we changed the way it's calculated. So for FY18, quarters 1 and 2, we no longer include employee memberships in that, and we had included those for the from 2013 through FY17. So we didn't; those numbers aren't restated. They include employee memberships.
So how many employee memberships?
So let's see. I don't have the exact. It's about. About seven to 800 employee memberships. If with sorry. Oh, so these numbers, and if you see in note, let's see, number 3, beginning in FY18 quarter 1, these market share percentages are actually understated because while we took out employee memberships from the numerator, we did not remove employee households from the denominator. So there really is, it's
So
not very consistent.
we just need to keep clean the data a little bit, right? Because
Well-
some employees maybe not our resident, right?
Correct, but we know we have a number of, we have the Columbia employee
Sure.
numbers. So we don't need to clean the data any further. We've changed the way it's being presented. And that was at board direction. If you want us to add that employee memberships back in, we can do that.
I think you just need to be consistent, right? Otherwise, when we look at the number 2013 and 2018, we see that
We're dropping.
we're dropping, right? But now you said we're not dropping. Then it's very confusing, right?
Okay, but the board's got to make up its mind.
Right.
I mean, because it was the board that told them to take it out, and now I hear the board wants to put it back
My
in.
opinion,
So we have to decide what
no,
What do we
Susan
want to
said
see?
in 2017 that was not taken out. But in 2018, that was taken out.
right because we
That was
But
the
why would
direction that we,
then it's not comparable at all, right?
correct.
yeah.
Then why
that's
put a
true.
number there? It's very confusing.
Why wouldn't you take it out of the denominator as well?
Well, we don't know how many employee residents households there are. We know how many memberships there are, but we don't have the data on.
Don't you have their addresses? And we could do a search for Columbia?
We could, and then we could overlay that. We could attempt to overlay that with lien paying property. That's a fairly complicated exercise. Is that really necessary? I mean, I think there's a better way.
I guess, well, so perhaps the thing to do is if we could just do a rough, if it is approximately 700 employee memberships or whatever the number you settle on, just do the math for the other years you're showing, and then we'd at least have a closer, because right now you say, we believe they're understated, but it's possible that if we put those memberships back in, it would still be dropping. We just don't know yet until we see the numbers.
I did it.
You did it. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So you did. Okay, thank you.
Okay, but I think the bigger question that staff needs to know: do we want to include employee memberships or not? Okay.
And I guess the question, may I just frame that? So are we looking at participation in community engagement and employees are a part of the community, or are you looking at attempting to gain some kind of financial evaluation?
Well, I mean, I would ask Dan, because I think you said like what 40% penetration is a good percentage for it.
Insane.
So I mean, I think that's really what I would want to see there is comparing, what's an average market penetration for gyms, and so I guess the question there is, if employees have a benefit that is a CA membership, would that count toward that or not, or would it only be paying memberships that would count toward that percentage?
Well, I mean, again, that's an organizational decision. Is that if you're just looking at members of the community, then an employee is a member of the community. But if we're looking at people who choose to pay us to participate, so really it goes to, we have to decide what we want to measure and then go from there, because you can make arguments both ways. And they're both very valid arguments. So, and just a lot of things that happens in the industry, when you look at comparable data, it's not really comparable data because what I count is this, your count is slightly different. So you're comparing two different kinds of apples. They're close, but they're not the same thing.
Milton had some.
Well, also, the employee membership is a benefit versus Janet or a non-employee getting a membership that he or she or the family pays for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not comparing apples to apples here.
Right, I understand that. I was just trying to think about if you're looking at, what percentage of the market for gym memberships CA has. Theoretically, the employee ones could count in there because you could assume that if they're getting that benefit, they're not paying to go somewhere else. I mean, they could be paying to go somewhere else in addition to. I don't know.
It's also probably true that some of those employees are choosing to be employees because of the
Yes,
benefit.
yes, they are.
That's equivalent to paying for it.
I know several of them like that.
So I think my question is, I would like to look at the market share because I want to look at long-term trend. Will we have more people participating in our program, or we have less people participating in our program in 5 years or in 10 years? That will give us some sense of people are really interested in our program, because that employee actually is the only small number percentage of total numbers, right? 700. We got how many? That's like 12,000, right? So it's really small number of percentage. So I would like the trend, look at the trend.
So this is kind of coming up with a little bit of a Haven conversation, and I think it's just a point to be clear. The ability to have access does not equal participation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to look at participation, there are other numbers to look at participation. Those are the usage data. That's participation. Having the ability to access, I own a membership, or I bought a resident card, that does not equal participation. So they are two separate things. So the percentage of market share, who chooses to be part of CA, but then participation is who actually chooses to use it once they have chosen to be part of. And they don't overlay, and they're not exactly the same thing.
I partially agree with that, but I totally don't agree with that at all, because you need to pay for it, right? It's not free stuff. You need to pay it. If people decide to pay for it, that means they are interested in that, right?
No.
At least partially.
It means they've chosen to pay.
They chose the club. Okay.
But what do you mean that? For example, if I want to use a club, right? I need to pay it, right? If I'm not interested at all, I will not pay for it, right?
You'd be surprised. You would be very surprised, I'm sure.
Chow, I can tell you that even with the benefit of employees having the membership, they don't participate.
Yeah, that's so. My point is, you said that there are a lot of people who are not interested at all, but they still pay the membership.
Yes, they do.
Are they insane?
But that's not our discussion tonight. You would be amazed at some of the stats. Okay, so Dick.
I noticed the tennis scores took a dip there. Was there an issue?
Absolutely. We have about a month and a half left before those change.
Okay, so I was just wondering if there was some kind of a issue.
No, absolutely. It's as soon as you. The reason the scores change is because people have to start playing in the bar.
Not a concern.
Oh yeah, that one. I've heard from
Before we get off onto the other discussions, let's try to solve this one. Because it's a really good point. What is it that the board really wants to see? If you want to see, if we are going to count, all the residential units in Columbia, and then say how many of those residential units have a card, well then, if we exclude the employees, then we have to exclude them from the overall number of the residential units. Otherwise, we're kind of screwing the number. I mean, because you'll never get to 100%, even if everybody bought one, because you would think.
And I have a suggestion, because I do statistics, right? And it's really difficult to get a number right, or because maybe 80% of people who probably come to the gym once a year, but the other 20% come every day, right? You never get something very representative. But I think there are some numbers that can be easily calculated and relatively understandable. For example, we divide the total visit by the total membership. That's, for example, the average visit per membership. That will be help Patuxent partially. Then maybe you have some distributions, for example, and people visit gym maybe tens per year. How many of that? And then people paid but never visited. How many of that? So get some kind of means and some other.
The average member visits a club, and this is pretty much universal. It's 100 times a year. That's the average. When you average it all out, 100 times a year is the average.
Mean or median?
The mean.
They never change it?
So twice a week, about an average is twice a week or a little less?
You have some people who come 7, you have some people who come 0. It's the average is, it varies between 99 and 101 from year to year. Every year it's calculated. It's crazy.
Okay, so it's going to go back to so we can get this, the membership market share.
I'm trying.
Alan.
So I guess I'm showing my age. I have no recollection of us making this decision, and clearly I was part of it. So let me turn to you. When this decision was made, did you have a position as our fitness professional here? Was that a good idea? Good idea? I won't take offense if you think it wasn't. Or a bad idea in terms of counting our market penetration to include or not include the employees?
I don't feel strongly either way about it, because in the overall number, it's a small number.
It's about 5%.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not, it doesn't dramatically move it one way or another. So I really don't have, it's whatever we want to see. It's just really, what are we using the number for? And if you added it back in, the real difference is, how many employees are actual residents of the community, and then that becomes an even smaller number. So
No, that 700 is the resident memberships.
So
yeah.
Ginny.
Yeah, just two quick things. One, is there any, you guys are the statistical experts, but is there any big deal in just, instead of an either or, just add another column that would have that in it, and we keep, Okay, that's question one. The other thing is, Charles' point there is interesting. Is there perhaps a reason why we should be keeping track of people that are members but are not actually using the facility? Because my concern is then they're not going to sign up again the following year. Is there a way we can know who they are, use data to show that it's 10% of our members or 20%, but actually do an outreach program to reach those people to get them involved so that they will be members the following year? Just an idea.
Do you have a sense, just to follow up on that, we talked about that range of usage. Do the people who use less end up dropping off significantly more?
No, and that's what people used to think. You have to work out twice a week, you have to work out 3 times a week. The big determining factor for attrition is not the volume at which you use it, it's when you change your pattern. So if your pattern drops. If you're working out 7 times a week and all of a sudden it's 4 or 5, it's more than the person who's coming twice, but all of a sudden you're not getting value because you're just coming 7. It's the same as somebody who goes from coming 3 times a week to coming once or twice. I'm not getting my value anymore. It's a changing pattern.
Because the other way to look at it is the people who have memberships and don't come, we should send them a thank you card every year. If anything, there's no wear and tear from them on our machines.
Invite them to a party once a year with pizza and soda.
That used to be the industry. That's the bad rap the industry has. We want to sell memberships and nobody to use it, and that's absolutely not the case because, well, one, it's not why we're in the business in the first place, but from a business perspective, there is so much competition now that somebody's going to get them to go there.
Right, that's my
So we
concern.
want them engaged. What you're talking about has been explored a lot, and it's a slippery slope. We've caused more cancellations by trying to engage the people who've quit. So the goal is you really, through your programming and your activities, the jump start we just did, you try to keep them engaged from the get-go. once they're out, when you start reaching out to them, then you're reminding them, so then they do quit. So it's kind of this whole catch-22 of how you manage it, and you have to slowly bring them back.
I'll tell you what, this is really
It's automatic renewal?
Can I just ask
outside the
one more
board's
question?
discussion.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
This is relevant to the actual data. Columbia resident memberships, that number has been consistent, correct?
No, that's the number that doesn't
that's the one
have
that took
the,
out the-
right.
So you,
In 2018, so you see that pretty substantial drop there. That's a chunk of that is employee memberships coming out.
Yeah, so I mean, if you add it back in, we're basically really doing almost what we were doing in 2017 and 2016. If you add that 700 back in.
Yeah.
So,
But what's our goal? Are we supposed to be going up a certain percentage every year? Or?
Is it true that for 2 years there have been no addition to CA residential units?
Well, no, it's just that they only update it annually, so we aren't at the point in 18 where they updated
I
yet.
see. So,
Right.
got it.
and if you think, I mean, outside of downtown, there really haven't been a
But there has
whole
been.
lot of.
But there has been some addition downtown, and there was
Right.
a lot of lake, and so there's.
Right. But those are just coming online now officially. I mean, in terms of the database.
Does this board have a goal, like by in a year from now, you expect to increase the membership by 1%, 2%? Is there a goal here? So the data, then we'll see whether you've accomplished that or not? Is that the purpose of this data
think
collection?
The board has ever set a particular
Okay, so it's just we
goal.
collect the data, okay.
Right. We collect the data and we look at it.
Are we measuring the data from the new residents in downtown? Do we have, I'm sure we have specific numbers about that. What's our penetration there? Like with the Metropolitan and the
No, I don't think we have that
New
granularity on
apartments
that.
We don't have that granularity since Scott left. We started trying to get that information. So I don't know if Jessica has that skill set or not. The person who's hired to hire Scott. Scott was the one who would pull that information from us.
that would be interesting.
I got tons of them.
Okay. So you have fiscal year 2013 through 2016 where we included employee memberships. And then you have fiscal year 18 where we did not include. So though it looks like a drop, it really isn't. So which way does the board want it reported? We got to tell them. And then we got to say, that's what we want, and we're not going to discuss it anymore. So what is Dick and Lynn?
Well, I think memberships are memberships, and makes sense to include them all.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Lynn and then Milton.
Okay, I would say include them all because then the numbers in 2013, 14, 15, 16 will be relevant.
But Dick, I find that surprising your statement because a marketing person, if I'm looking for marketing share, why am I concerned? Why won't I factor it into something I'm giving someone? My marketing share is based on someone buying something from me.
I think it's a similar concept to magazines giving super cheap subscriptions because then they get circulation numbers up. So you could.
But they're still paying for. But you're still paying for something,
You're
though.
paying, 10% of cover price.
I can answer your question. First of all, as Dan pointed out, it's only about 5% figure there. And the other thing is, these people, maybe the membership is important to them as an employment benefit, so we want to make sure it remains value to them.
We're not going to take it away from them.
Oh, no. But I mean, let's say somebody has an opportunity to go someplace else and they say, but gee, I'll lose my membership and I like it here and I like the, I don't see that. I mean, in marketing, we do sometimes consider the freebies that we give out.
Okay, that's.
I mean, it's it just seems to be an unnecessary item. I don't think the employee members' attitudes are going to be that different from just the resident members.
Janet?
I was just wondering if you had a suggestion for what would be a meaningful number that we could have a consistent. I mean, we can add these back in.
We could, I think it would be to probably add them back in. I don't think trying to scrub out the households makes sense.
I would prefer to add them in simply because then I can compare 2013 and 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 and kind of, because trying to go back and redo that data it's not going to work. We can't do that. All right. So I hear that the board decision is that we will include employee memberships in the numbers, and please document that so that when someone else who isn't here tonight comes, the board already talked about it, and that's our decision.
We can add a total visit of that, right, per year. Total number of visits to our facility. Total number of visits to our facility. That number can be included, right? It's pretty easy to add that, right? Total visit of that people visit our facilities, put it there as well per year. That I think partially indicating actually how many people.
What does that tell you?
How many people using our facility or they come to the gym?
Yeah, but what does
How
that tell
active,
you?
for example, maybe the indicator of how active our residents, right? They actually, when they paid or not paid, but they come to visit our gyms. And it's kind of well-being of the residents in our.
Alan?
I would
The whole
support something like that. The one thing we have said as an intention in the board is to increase participation. And so whether it's average visits per member or whether it's percentage of members who do visit or whatever would be the meaningful, I leave it to the professionals to let us know what's the most meaningful measure of participation. But we said we wanted, that's the purpose. I mean, I was joking before when I said we should send them a card that they didn't use it. That's what we said we wanted to do, so we should be measuring that. Milton?
And when we look at total visits, can we separate residents from non-resident?
Yeah, it gets complicated when you.
Just
because our usage, because of what we do, we have checking data, and then trying to parse out who's a resident, who's not, gets very difficult. And then we have what we call mass use, which is, it's not an exact number, but like your swim lessons, the ice skating things, the USTA, the things that are added on top of the check-in, and that's virtually impossible to parse out resident versus non-resident. So the check-in, any kind of usage data would just be a chunk number.
Yeah, for what I said, I wasn't separating in my head residents from non-residents. If they're members, they're members. So we want the members to use the facilities more.
I agree with that. So just a total number of visits to our facilities per year. I think it's kind of indicator. So how active our residents have been in the last year or something like that.
You keep saying residents.
Or just members, right?
I think like the Net Promoter Score tells us more about our members and how they're. I don't think the number of visits necessarily correlates to engagement. So
You mean they come to the gym but doesn't do anything?
well, I mean, so to Dan's point, what if I used to come 5 times and now I come 3 times and somehow I'm dissatisfied with that? I mean, maybe you could see that reflected in number of visits, but I feel like if you come once a week but you're perfectly content with that number of times and you like being there that one time a week, that's more important to I mean,
But it's not an either or.
Yeah.
If we see the number of visits and the NPS score is still high,
I haven't.
great.
I mean, I get it.
So, for example,
I see no harm in including it. I
so
just don't really.
I
see
think one
the
example, we're looking at the swimming pool, right? How many people visit the swimming pool per summer? We have that kind of number. Then we know some swimming pool.
We have that number.
We have that, right?
For each pool.
Then we know, okay, some pools are really underutilized, right?
right.
Some other pools have been like utilized. So that's the kind of indicator we use to do some analysis. So the similar, I think, similar indicators, how many participations for memberships using our facilities. So per year, I think if we keep adding this number over several years, we may have some useful information.
We could look at the data and see what we think we could present on a consistent basis that might make sense. Because I think that the number of visits is going to be members, guests. Like I badged in yesterday to do a risk management inspection, so I count as a visit. There's
Sure.
also,
So my point is, for this kind of visit, it's very small number. Definitely, you have some number may skew the whole number. But if you get a 1 million data visit from the whole population, it's just 10 of them or like 100 of them. Maybe it's not a true visit, but that still will not skew the whole data set because you
so
have.
if you're not concerned about how accurate the data is, we can do it.
Milton.
But Charles, if I may, you're a numbers person. Generally, you don't create numbers for the sake of looking at them.
Sure.
They want to serve a purpose.
Sure.
What are you trying to
So
serve?
my
What
purpose is, as I said, I want to see how. Then, for example, if I've got a total number of visits and then I got a total numbers of membership, I can do a division and see, okay, what's the average visit per member per year. Over a year, you can see if that number.
But that's not going to be a true number because if you look at total number of visits, remember, even with our new membership structure, we're giving up more guest passes. And we have guests that will be in that visit.
I think we have the ability to check is a guest visit or is not a guest visit, right? So when you check in, you know who is the guest. So check-in is a guest or not a guest, right? Is a membership, right?
As I said earlier, yes. So I can check in, but a number of our facilities get traffic that doesn't necessarily check in. So then we have to decide, and it's not cut and dry.
Sure,
Because
sure.
then, like I said, there are mass use. There are the swim team who doesn't check in. We just take a number for how many people are supposed to be there. The ice skating people when they come for lessons and clinics. So. We have, I can pull check-in data, and you're going to get very low numbers for some facilities, and the clubs, you're going to get the most accurate data. But the other facilities, the sports park, ice rink, not so much. That's where all the swim center, that's where all the mass use comes back in, which that I can't parse out at all, because that is a manually collected number.
Alan.
I get that, and as long as we know those things, and the reason why we got into this discussion is because we realized we were comparing apples to oranges in the numbers. As long as we make a decision on what it is we want, then we'll be able to track what we're tracking, and the mass numbers we'll have to worry about some other way, or not worry about, or wait till you tell us that nobody's coming in for swim team anymore or something, but we know that's not going to happen.
So as long as we are consistent connecting our numbers, I think that should be fine. And there's
Yeah, so I think, can we ask staff to go back and look to see
what numbers we can provide?
Yeah,
Well,
I know.
I don't think it's a matter of what numbers we can provide. The key thing is what numbers are actionable. What numbers actually have meaning, have value, and we really should be looking at this from 30,000 feet up. I mean, we don't need to. I don't think as a board we really need to get that granular and get all these little specifics. We don't need every number you can come up with.
No.
Ellen.
But we have set an intention that we want participation to increase, and that's what we're really after is participation. And so that's why I say if you all would decide what's the best measure that you can give us to measure participation so that we can track that over time. That works for me. I'm not asking about every number. I'm asking about a participation score.
We can do that, Alan.
Yeah, I agree with what Alan said. So so what Alan said is you provide us the guidance how to value or evaluate the participation rate, right? For me, I just give you very simple suggestion, probably just a number, right? So, or you can come out to the board and say, okay, this is the best number that can represent the participation rate. That'd be great too.
So if you want to do that, probably a new metric. Yeah. A new metric.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you. All right, now anything else on the dashboard? Let's kind of get to.
Anything you want to point us to that is either you want to brag about or tell us is a concern for you?
Yeah, I mean, I want to brag a little bit. So, I have a bi-weekly call with Clara Rich as we review the data and we go through all this. And we have a new service management team. And so they were working on a new dashboard for me. And it was a new data analyst. So I got on a call with them on Monday. And they were looking at we just actually did the most recent survey, which was vague on a calendar year, so it was the first quarter. So he had been looking at the data for the fourth quarter and comparing it year over year and previous. And the first thing he asked me is, okay, so the first question I have to ask you is, did you change your survey? And I said, no. Why? He says, because this change in Net Promoter that you've had over the last half of the year is spectacular, and it's not something you've ever seen before. So I'm really proud of what the team has been able to accomplish by utilizing Clara Bridge, actioning the information that they find, and creating differences. And there's two things. One I'm going to take from the most recent survey, but it's also in this data as well. The first half of the year for the calendar year for 2016, 17, we're 18 now, yeah, 17. From the first half to the second half, discussions about cost and value decreased dramatically. So people stopped talking about how much things cost, whether they're getting their value or not. It's on a downward trend. And while cost and value and fee and pricing is always the lowest Net Promoter Score, people usually don't talk about it. Nobody's like jumping up in joy for what they're paying. But the Net Promoter Score rose slightly on that as well. And then for this most current survey, we tracked for each facility. One of the things we tracked about are what are the most talked about things in conversation, what's the highest conversational item. And for the first time, the four big facilities, this has not been an issue at the other facilities, but it's for the three clubs in Haven. Fees and pricing is not the number one thing on any of that. Staff is number one. On some of the fees and pricing has fallen to the third or fourth thing on the list.
Does that mean we should charge more?
We'll decide that next month.
It really means that the staff is starting to engage, connect. Some of the programming they're doing, some of the things, the trainings we're doing, is really starting to make a difference. One of the biggest ones is at Supreme, which has been except for the bubble, and depending on the time of the year, the golf courses. The latest Net Promoter for Hobbits is down because 30 people responded and everybody's neutral. But Supreme's Net Promoter has been only as high as 26, and it's been as low as, I want to say, 17, which is outside of the Owen Brown tennis bubble, which are consistently low. This most recent survey, 42. Yeah.
Is that data on here? Because I'm looking, I see pool, fitness center, golf, tennis.
Summary.
Yeah, no. I just got this information, so I'm sharing it.
This is through the second quarter,
Yeah.
through October 31.
On the survey metrics, the likely to recommend, is that a typo or is it really only 8%?
Where
It's the last line on the survey metrics, right above the Net Promoter Scores.
to the left of the total volume by sentiment and the overall MPS.
Under the average score, it says likely to recommend 8.02.
Oh, that's the 0 to 10 scale. So
Oh,
it's an 8
oh,
and
oh,
0
oh,
to
okay.
10 scale.
Okay.
That's different.
That you might want to highlight because everything else is 100%. You're looking and going.
So Dan, I have a question about
Wait, Milton had it.
No, I would just follow to what Alan was, the question he posed. Another thing that I like, it's still a work in progress, but one of the things that's very important to me that the staff is doing and are getting better and better at it is the customer experience. I constantly use the example, and it's probably getting old, that you can come to one of our facilities 10 times, have 9 good experience, have a bad experience the 10th time, and which one do you remember? So every time someone walks through the door, it's about a very good experience. And that's what we're working at.
Well, I can confirm that too. I go to the gym 3 times a week, and these people are really nice. I mean, they chat you up, and not just me. I don't even know if they know that I'm on the board or not, but I see it as people are coming in. There's friendly greetings. So they seem to know some of their regulars and talk about how your kid's doing, that sort of thing. So there really is a real good interchange there. And
it's about making that connection with anyone who walks through the door.
It really is a friendly place, and I think Dan, you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
So for the MPS score, what's the full score?
What's the what?
For the MPS score, right? You have kind of wide variety of that number. What's the maximum number? What's the minimum number for that?
The scale is from 100 to -100.
So 0 means neutral.
No, 0 is bad.
But what's minus 100?
What?
That's really bad.
You close your doors.
Okay.
The scale's 100 to -100.
So that means we are not achieving 50%? Because now I see, for example, the MPS score for pool, 45.8.
Yeah.
And for fitness center, only 30%. And the golf, 48. And then tennis, only 9.1%.
Satisfaction with the bubble,
Or that's really,
which is going.
we're not even achieving 50.
Astronomical businesses,
Uh-huh.
Apple. Apple's usually in the low to mid 70s. The industry average in the fitness industry is 43.
43.
The industry average in the golf industry for the type of golf courses we have, ironically, is 43.
Okay.
So there are varying ranges. Some of the scores are dictated sometimes by the volume. Like I said, Hobbits, their score went down for the most current survey, but only 30 people responded because nobody's played a lot of golf, in the last couple of months. So some scores you have to take with a grain of salt. But also what we saw for them, to understand how the Net Promoter Score works, and the scale is 0 to 10. 0 to 6, you're a detractor and actively working against the business. 7 and 8, you're a neutral, you're just there, moving along. 9 and 10, you're a promoter. So you take the neutrals and throw them out, and take the percentage of detractors and subtract it from the percentage of promoters, and that's the score you get. So in the case of the most recent Hobbits Glen, a third of their responses are neutral. So they're really not detractors, so they're going to have a low Net Promoter Score. If the two numbers of promoters and detractors are anywhere close, their Net Promoter Score is going to be low. But in reality, most people are neutral. But we want them to be promoted.
Sure. So my question is, I would like something to show what are we comparing with, for example, what's the median or mean industry score there?
43.
So everything, but you said something like for the pool or for the golf, they are different, right? Everything is 43.
The ones we have industry comparable numbers for, the number's 43.
43, okay.
The ones if we had an industry comparable number for pools, we'd have one. There isn't one.
Okay.
Nobody's done any kind of
I see.
industry comparison for that.
Okay, thanks.
Is
Okay,
the tennis
let's start
the,
wrapping this up.
okay,
So,
the
Jim.
tennis, is that the athletic club and the bubble?
Yeah, that's all tenants.
It's all.
So what's
and
causing indoor tenant? Oh, well,
It's
It's
in
all
there.
tenants.
It's all tenants.
this time of year? Okay.
This survey was through at the end of October.
Okay.
Alan?
So if our fitness center NPS is 30.7, that's well below the industry average. So we're not even treading water there.
So
I mean,
for
we're rising
this-
a little bit.
For this particular
Went up a little
set of data, for the most recent one, it's 39. But for this particular set of data, the athletic club was 47, 46. Columbia Gym was 30, and Supreme was 24.
The athletic club was. I thought the athletic club because remember we
Because
gave
of
them the
that.
we gave them the
Because
cake.
I wish everything was a chart that was up and to the right, but you have to earn your keep every day. And varying things, whether it's renovations or something goes wrong with facilities, and that's what keeps you honest. I mean, it is not always sunshines and roses. We're not always, and that's why we do it. That's why we do it on every quarter. That's why we measure ourselves. The most recent survey, athletic club, like I said, is it 40? Columbia Gym's up to 36, and Supreme's up to 42.
It went from 20-something to 42?
Yes.
And the explanation for that is?
You know, one,
It wasn't friendly to border before?
they've really gotten a lot of traction with the staff. One of the problems and challenges we have with Supreme, we've kind of discussed it here, it's a very chopped up facility. So the facility does not lend itself to any kind of social networking and tribalism that makes the athletic club so great. And the Columbia Gym falls in the middle. So one of the things we've done at Supreme, we've tested at Supreme because they needed one, we've done a major overhaul of the staff and really upgraded the staff, the frontline staff, whether moving people out who couldn't get what we're trying to do or trained up those ones who just needed the training. But we took that a step further where we built some community. We bought CA mugs, gave them to some of the frontline staff. So now you have to go out and meet a member, thank them for being a member, introduce yourself, get to know them, give them as a mug as a thank you. We did some stuff for some basketball players. We did some stuff at a couple of our senior classes to help encourage these communities. These are some of the results. And, I hope it stays at 42. I'm not going to guarantee it given the other scores. This is the anomaly at the moment. We have to repeat it. But it's an immediate response to some of the things we're doing to fix some of the challenges we have.
Buy more mugs.
We can stay at 42 and keep growing. We'll buy more mugs.
I will say, as Supreme's the gym I go to, and I've seen a big difference. It used to be you come in, they'd sort of be chatting among themselves, and they wouldn't even acknowledge that you existed. And now there's a concerted effort to say hello and be friendly.
Yeah, you can see the change. You notice it. And people talk about it too. I mean, I hear in the locker room and the classes. And the other thing is, I hear people talking about the survey.
Really?
Yes, because I hear people say, oh, if there's a problem, here's what you want to do. Because what they've heard and what their friends have told them is that this is actionable. I mean that when you fill out that survey and things happen, I mean, management looks at it and things happen. And so that word is getting, I find that word is getting out, which is very important because, yeah, so go do the survey.
I encourage people to do that.
Okay, one more, and then we're going to cut it off. Alan.
No, I want to talk about something else when we're done with this.
Okay, so is there anything else for the dashboard? Okay, because we're going to get out of here by 10:30. Okay, one last thing. We had the letter from Winter Growth.
Fantastic.
It's a wonderful letter, and we got a lot of letters about budget issues. And I'm not clear why Winter Growth got to have, and I have nothing against them. My grandmother used to use them. They're a fine place. I'm just not clear why Winter Growth got to have their letter broadcast to the world and not other people who sent us letters about budget issues.
Actually, I was wondering the same thing, and I love winter growth.
Someone help me understand this?
That's a good point.
What is the budget issue?
No, because generally, I thought when I first heard this, it was just a complimentary letter as opposed to anything.
This was about the volunteer center, and so clearly we have money in the budget about the volunteer center, and their volunteers help us to do that. And, you know, all good stuff. It was a wonderful letter and all that, but it just seems to me. So what I'm hearing you say is that you all took it more as a thank you letter for
we
services.
appreciate what you do for us as opposed to asking for
Something
money.
budget.
Because
Funding.
I don't think it changed what we give the volunteer center in the budget.
It could. I mean, we could decide not to fund the volunteer center or whatever. Okay.
And the other possibility is I'm thinking this may have simply come into like Milton, not the board.
Well, it actually came into community services.
Yeah, and it just got. Okay. Tracking forms, anything? Nope. Okay, talking points.
The board voted to transfer capital funds and watershed-related capital projects between fiscal years. The board voted to grant easement to Howard County for open space in Rivers Corporate Park, grant a utility easement to BGE for the Crescent property southeast side of parcel D, grant an easement near Meriwether Post Pavilion to HRD, grant an easement to HRD for the northwest side of parcel D, grant an easement to 3 areas of northwest, southeast, and southwest of parcel D to HRD. Staff will give the board a draft of a charge for a new environmental sustainability committee no later than 10 days before the February board meeting. The board will hold a closed meeting after the February 8th work session. The board agreed to invite HCC Board of Directors and Executive Board of Howard County General Hospital to the April Stakeholders Dinner. The board agreed to have staff include employee memberships when determining CA membership market share, and staff will determine which numbers they can provide consistently that will enable the board to track participation over time.
Sounds
a lot of stuff.
Very good, yeah.
Well done, Valerie.
All right, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and for staying until almost 10:30. I knew it was going to be a long meeting. So I will remind you that the work session is coming up. The big topic on the work session is the budget.
This is budget season?
Budget.
No, this is a budget season.
So come prepared. And we will have a closed meeting afterwards.
So Andy, I have a suggestion. If we have future meetings last over 10:30, we should have a surprise gift.
All right. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.